Hilliard, Councilmember Reeves, Councilmember Khalid, Councilmember Baker. Also as present is Mayor Edwards. Assistant City Attorney Melanie Winfield, Manager Melanie Winfield, and you have a quorum.
Okay. Councilwoman Gunn?
So the reason this meeting was called is that we have 6 bills that were dropped from our South Fulton delegation, and some of it, I think the majority of the council is concerned with some of the proposed changes, and I wanted to kind of start a discussion about that. But if we can, our city attorney is not here, and I think we're waiting on a few other council people because it is raining. So are we able to take a quick recess for 10 minutes to allow a few more people to come?
We can do a recess if it's a board pleasure, but the meeting was to start at 2 o'clock.
It was, but again, like I said, the weather is impacting.
You got it. So I'm just saying, we start at 2 o'clock. If it's the will of the board, and I'll take a vote on it.
Yeah. Mayor, I don't wish to delay. Again, the weather is bad, but I got here, and you know, Mr. Reed was very clear that today is probably one of the busiest days for his business, and I think that if there's a discussion that needs to be had, then we need to move on.
Mr. Reed, go ahead.
Also, too, in fairness to the constituency that came out, delaying them any further will delay them from getting back to their normal daily routine to continue on. So if we can go ahead and continue and discuss.
Well, I think we can yield to you.
And discuss what we need to discuss, but whatever is in the best interest. But there are the constituent base that is here, and I yield to Councilwoman Jones.
And I appreciate that, and I do want to be respectful of the constituent base, but I'm also waiting for our city attorney, who can also kind of weigh in, and being fair to other colleagues that have contacted us to say that they're en route. So I'm just asking if we could just, recess for a few more minutes to allow some other council people to get here.
Councilwoman Rob.
I was gonna say, yeah, I also want to respect the constituents' time. It's not like in the next few minutes we're gonna get to resolution on these issues, but I do think it's important that as we begin whatever conversations, we're mindful that I hope we come in the spirit of recommending what we can't live with in these bills, because they're kind of moving kind of fast. And so I hope we leave out of here with some resolve and able to provide some feedback to the delegation.
Ms. Willis, and then we'll start the conversation.
It's unfortunate that we are here, but what I would like to say is that the conversations amongst us is really not going to do anything. The conversation should be with our delegation. Our delegation was quite clear when they told us they were going to introduce bills to clear up some of the ambiguity in our charter. I also want to provide some historical perspective. When House Bill 513 was introduced in the General Assembly in the year of 2013, what the bill looked like on the House side was totally different from what the bill looks like now. Once the bill moved over to the Senate, it drastically changed, and it was drastically changed by Senator John Albers. And he changed the bill to his liking so that he can carry the bill, so he could carry the bill. So there was always intent that this bill was going to have some adjustments made to it. It was not a perfect bill coming out of the General Assembly. And it was always an intent that it was not going to take 5 years to make changes. We knew that it was not a perfect bill, but the goal was to get the bill out of the General Assembly so that we could bring, so we can vote on whether or not to incorporate the city so we could lock our borders, because our land was consistently being annexed. And so I just wanted to bring that historical perspective, because some people are thinking that we're supposed to wait 5 years to make changes to the bill, and that was never the case.
Ms. Gumbs, what I'd like to do is, if there's specific, you want to be specific to one bill at a time and talk about specifically those things that we need to have conversation on, I think we can expedite this as fast as we can.
Certainly. Since we don't have it. So, we can start with the first one.
Which of those, Jack?
House Bill 921, or maybe we should table that one until,
921?
let's do 1019 since that's the longest one that I've seen.
Go ahead. She still has the floor.
I yield to Councilwoman Rao.
The way I approached it, and I hope somebody is recording, House Bill 1019, line 33. I'd like them to consider requiring the council members also live in the district for 12 months. That's consistent with state law. And it is a requirement for running for office, so that was a suggestion that I wanted to offer.
Excuse me 1 minute. Madam Clerk, you taking this?
Yes, it's been recorded.
Go ahead. Being recorded. Go ahead.
Line 87, 89, given where we are or what we experienced in December, one of the things that was pointed out that we had a locally adopted ordinance and we had the charter. And I think when we first got feedback from a bill that was going to be put forth by Senator James, the feedback that we collectively agreed on at that time, that we should follow what was in the locally adopted ordinance, that any action to remove the mayor or a council member arising from misconduct, malfeasance, nonfeasance, or malpractice aligned with state law, OCG 4556.1. I think that's the appropriate way to handle it. I think it takes politicizing removal from office off the table. And if they in fact have done this, let's go to step and follow what other cities are doing, which is follow state law.
Okay. Ms. Gumbs?
Captain and I had an opportunity to kind of talk about most of this, so she can continue with whatever she's speaking of right now. We can go to the next.
I think line 170 of the bill needs clarification on the grounds for disapproval. This would be easier with purchases via check or purchase order, but would be difficult with purchasing cards in terms of dealing with a transaction. These are questions that we're raising for them to look at. That term is very subjective.
Ms. Gumbs, before you go any further, Mr. Long is here, our lobbies. I want to make sure that you're listening and taking
yes.
notes about what's being said. Continue.
Line 175, I think the meeting notice should also indicate who called the meeting, because right now, I know we've had times when we have been unclear about who called the meeting. And so I think if that's on the notice, that addresses any concerns.
But we already do that now.
But we don't put who called the meeting on the public notice for special call meetings.
So they're asking us to put it on?
No, I'm suggesting that would be clarity about, because there's been times back and forth for like, who called the meeting, who were the 4 people? Well, these are the 4 people who called the meeting. So that's a suggestion that I'm offering.
Yeah.
On line 175.
So, can you?
Yeah.
Is that something that has been done, Madam Clerk, in previous roles that you've had in different cities and municipalities of placing the who calls meetings, because people can get that information from open records, correct?
Yes, and I'm trying to remember, I think I did put it on the bottom of the notice, when it was called outside of a meeting, say like, call today, I would put at the bottom of it, who called the meeting.
Okay.
I don't think that there's nothing we have now to prohibit that. It's not a bad idea. I think it just brings clarity, so I would really have no objection to that.
Okay.
Line 184, there's discussion about we should use Fulton County's legal organ. Legal organ. Our charter called for us to have our own legal organ, and we have identified our own legal organ, so we should, they should change that to reflect the city of South Fulton's legal organ.
Okay.
Line 234 and 35, the language, and I'm raising a question, are not these the city manager's responsibilities versus the mayor's? So, could you read that, page 234 and 235?
234, it says, "The mayor shall be the part-time chief executive of the city government and a member of the presiding officer of the city council and responsible for efficient and orderly administration of the city affairs." Yeah, that's city managers. The mayor shall, is that it?
Yeah,
No,
that's,
you-
The mayor shall be responsible for the enforcement of laws, rules, regulations, ordinances, and franchises in the city.
right, and so I'm saying those are the city manager's duties, and so, I think that needs to be clarified.
What does it say in the ordinance now? I don't disagree with you. What was it say
I
in the
have-
ordinance now? What does it say to that part?
I didn't bring my chart.
Okay, no problem, so we'll just move on. We'll
Can I-
compare.
Can I offer one more thing, Councilmember Rao? Can
Yeah.
you yield just one, and I'll
Yeah.
yield right back to you?
Yeah,
There was a section in here that required the chief of police and the chief of fire for the city manager that the council had to confirm any termination.
right.
And I think that should still remain, under the city manager. We don't hire
Yeah.
the chief or the fire chief.
What line is that?
Okay, hold on one second, I
So that
highlighted that. I'll come back to you, but it's in here.
It's in there.
They are considered employees of the city manager, and if we're gonna be in compliance with not interfering with staff, that needs to be under the direction of the city manager. We don't need to be involved in personnel matters and whether or not they're terminated or hired.
So just to clarify,
Hold on one second. Go ahead. I'm gonna give it back to you. I'll find it and give it to you.
when I went through, I just went through each of the bills and did the numbers, so whatever we add back, so it kind of flows and they can understand what we're saying, I think it would be important.
Go ahead.
I said, line 245 and 247, the current structure works where mayor's appointee serve as chair. But I said, I need some clarification because they also recommend vice chairs be selected. And so I think they should be selected among their peers. So any
Can
thoughts?
you give a line?
Line 245 through 247.
And I,
Oh, let me ask a question.
You mind?
Let me ask a question that usually the mayor is appointed to a committee does not vote. Would that change? You think that should change if we're gonna be selected on the peers, among their peers?
I don't
That
know.
I think you should have a right, they should have a right, that person should have a right to vote.
What line, what's that? Did you say?
So 245, it reads, appoint city council committees, committee chairpersons, committee vice chairpersons, and appoint council members to oversee and report on the function of the various departments of the city. I guess this is speaking only to city council committees.
Am I allowed to speak?
Yes, go ahead.
So Councilmember Rao, I do support that because when I have done research, the mayors typically do appoint the chair of the committees. Let me give you a specific example. in the city of Douglasville. They do have a committee structure government, and in their charter, the mayor at the beginning of every year appoints who's going to be the committee chair of these committees.
What is their form of government?
They city council. They have the same form of government as us. However, they do have a committee structure instituted into their form of government, and it does allow for the mayor to appoint who's over these committees, and these committees are like the finance chair, public works. They have different committees for different infrastructure.
Well, we have that.
But we have, it's only made up of council members. We have constituents involved in ours.
Which is atypical.
Right. That's not typical, that's what
But
we
the mayor
discussed.
still appoints a constituent.
No, he appoints who chairs it. So if it's if we have, remember when we had our finance committee and we talked about establishing a finance committee with just council members, 3 or 4 council members, the mayor will appoint who chairs that committee.
But but the planning, the code, and what's the other one? Code enforcement, planning, and zoning. Right now, the mayor has a chair that he has appointed a constituent.
No, those are administrative.
I think the difference, now that I'm looking at this, I think the difference between committees and boards are
Right.
two different things. So
Talking
this,
about
now that
boards.
this really speaks to city council committees, and I think
Right.
part of this is because we haven't formally established that this is our process.
Right.
But this bill is trying to get us there, which I have my opinions about that, but,
There's a subsequent bill that was trying to institute committees,
Committee
which I agree with you on that. I'm not, and I've already had a conversation and she's okay with that, but with us not doing that. But I agree with you, we're not ready for
What
that.
bill was that, 9?
I don't remember
The
which
committee
one.
structure bill was 1028.
And let me just say this, I think, as it stands now, some of the things we started talking about is that if we get to the point where no bill goes on our agenda, our regular meeting agenda, until it's been vetted in a work session, that would save a lot of this.
Well,
Because, this is just my opinion, because also, this work is very time consuming. And if we start lining up all these committees, in addition to our work session, and when they clearly said it's part-time, we need to make it so this is realistic and manageable, not just for ourselves, but our staff who have to support us. And so I think if we, again, our work sessions, if we get agreement for 4 people that we've discussed it enough in work session, is ready to go on a regular agenda, that addresses the vetting that sometimes does not take place currently. Because sometimes administratively, things come up, and I understand there might be emergency situations where we have to deal with it. But I think most things, we do have the time to deal with them in a work session before they go to a regular agenda.
Mayor, may I say, may I have, do you mind?
I'm trying to remember, so
And I'm
what's the
gonna say,
conversation?
I'm in agreement with you, Councilmember Rao. We did both have a conversation with House Rep Bazemore, and we expressed to her that we are moving to that direction. As a matter of fact, I sent an email to the city attorney and requested for her to go ahead and draft up an amended ordinance to move us in that direction. And just to let you know, she is okay with us not
Doing the committee at this time.
Yes, because I told her that
Committee.
yes, because
She's supposed to be pulling that bill.
yeah, because I told her that we are
She's supposed to be pulling that.
moving in the direction to have a work session, the first meeting, and regular meeting, the second meeting.
Just for clarification purposes, can we list the bill because
It was
10
1028, House Bill 1028.
there's so many of them?
So,
1028, she's going to.
So she's okay with us,
pulling that, and
Right.
then we would need to remove this right now,
can you?
item 8, line 245 through 247.
I yield back to Councilmember Rao,
I think
Mayor.
Ms. Guns had the floor.
Or I yield back to whoever has the floor, I'm sorry.
There's another portion in here, under city manager's responsibilities. And it came down to him approving and disapproving expenses for the city council. And there was some concerns as to that level of authority that we are giving him to do checks and balances on the council, and actually at the same time, we are his supervisors. So that is a concern of mine. I can't remember what line it is, but I'm operating off of.
I tell you this, I agree with you on that. And I think the city manager would probably agree to it also.
Yeah.
That, you know, you're all his bosses, and you should be, your expense should be reflected upon you as a leader.
And I think they had him reporting out at every city council
No,
meeting,
no,
and that information needs to be straight.
I don't, I think that needs to be changed, Ms. Gunn.
I'll tell you, I know I wrote everything down on this list, so I just have to find it.
There's also another, and then I'll use it.
Make sure y'all calling out the lines so that they can.
Are we still on the same bill, right?
Yes,
Okay.
1019. There's also a part in here where the city the city clerk will go up under, the city manager. And right now, that is one of your appointments, and we confirmed. So,
How do you feel about that?
and what are your thoughts on our clerk reporting to the city manager versus their council?
I don't have a problem with it being what it is now.
So
But
the,
they're
Saying leaving it the way it is.
Yes. I mean, I have with being the way it is right now. It's just me talking.
I mean, you did a good job on
If
it.
it don't fix, don't broke it, don't break it.
Okay.
Ain't broke, don't fix it, whatever it is.
Again, so we need to weigh in so
Yeah.
that they're
Yeah.
aware.
What line numbers is that,
City clerk is under line 317.
is somebody recording this?
Yes. We record that too.
So you're asking that we,
I don't think that's a structure that we need to,
I think we need to keep it the way it is.
okay.
so we tell him the line number again, so we can.
Or
It's 319 through.
317 through, yeah, 319.
And on that same 319, omit shall be a council member. We've never discussed that. So leaving in there suggests that we would have identified the clerk as a council member. I don't know why that was in there.
Okay. So are you all finished?
No,
Oh, no, this
Let me
bill.
go. Well, let me get on the other side. Other people need to talk. Mr. Khalid?
No, I want them to finish, because I'm late, so if they want to continue, I've got a different set of questions.
No, it's dialogue, so we can go.
You can go ahead on, why don't you go on, Mr. Khalid? They've been talking.
Okay, so, well, no, my first question is around, it's actually, I just want to go back to the notice. So there was an affidavit filled out by Representative Bazemore that notice of the intent of this bill was made to the city. And it is still unclear to me who received that notice and why the rest of the council didn't get that notice. Where was the breakdown in communication? Because I think we could have, in talking with Representative Bazemore this weekend, we could have been having these talks last week if we had all been notified that this bill had happened. So I think around like February 4th and February 11th, she contacted the city and said that she had this intent to do this legislation. So who did she contact in our city?
Okay, let me do this. We're gonna be talking about the changes to the bill. Procedural things that we have no control over as it pertains to the state, that's a different matter. So we're on this bill right now. If there's any other changes you see in the bill.
So I do have questions, but I do think there is a procedural thing that we do have control over. I was trying to give you the opportunity. When I talked to Deborah Bazemore, she said that she spoke to you. And so the first issue that I have is that when you found out about the bill, you did not contact all of us on council to let us know that the bill was coming. We wouldn't be scrambling in an emergency meeting to proffer changes that may not be accepted if we had known when you knew that this bill was coming. So that's my first issue, but my second issue will be for our city attorney, because I understand that with all of these bills, Under the Constitution of the state of Georgia, ex post facto or retroactive laws cannot be written. So whatever changes these bills are bringing about in regards to personnel, whether it's moving people around under different offices or whatever, if these people have already made agreements or already have an understanding about their employment with the city, does that Article 1, Paragraph 10 section of the Constitution that says that no retroactive bills shall be made, how does that comport with what is trying to be done in these bills now?
So I think the retroactivity requires that there be a lot of discussion and conversation with respect to the implementation of these changes. And that's because you do have several positions that will be affected. For example, the city clerk's position could potentially be affected. My position could potentially be affected. The city manager's position, the treasurer's position. You do have constitutional vested rights that officials, employees, and certain people have with respect to the retroactivity of the application of laws. So you would have to take into play what are the constitutional vested rights that this person would have, and how would that comport with what we're trying to change. I think that's even another reason to make sure that whatever changes you do implement, they're not done in haste, but they're done in conversation, so that you're not required to address these issues on the spur when the issue comes up is, okay, what are the constitutional implications and what would this mean as far as the applicability and the operation of this particular provision?
Because for example, one of the provisions which people have already talked about would place our council aides up under the city manager, and the city manager would also set like their budget and the budget that we would have for council things. And like, my council aide has 3 kids, so I just want to be able to tell him that his job is not going to change because of this bill, or he's not going to lose his job because of this bill. So that's.
Let me just interject here. What recommendations in the bill that we're talking about that you would like to make a change in that will get you to what you're talking about now?
Well, so this is the reason I'm asking, because I actually think some of these things are good and they make sense, and I've been talking with state legislatures, and I think they make sense as long as they are not retroactively applied. So if for the next set of council aides that come after ours, if we want to like reconsolidate them, I think that probably does make sense. There were good things about the council aide program when it was under Mr. Massey. So I'm not saying that I definitely want to, I don't want to say like take all of those things out. There's a provision about all of these provisions about people reporting to the city manager. I don't necessarily think they are bad things. I think that they are not good things at this time. And so my question is really about the timing is it even anything that we have to consider if it's not going to take effect until the next city manager or the next council person that's elected?
I'm gonna try this again. You will give me specific lines in that bill that you would like to see changed. I think we can move along.
Well, I've entered into the discussion some things that I think are important. The next time I talk, I will have line numbers and bills for you.
Okay, thank you. I'm not saying they weren't important.
Right.
They probably are important. I'm just saying that you're here to discuss any specific changes or that need to be done so we can communicate them to the state to see we can go from there.
So I guess with that being said, the thing that I would like to communicate to our state representatives is my concerns about retroactivity and where we can agree, because we're not going to agree on everything, but in the places that we can't agree, will you try to retroactively enforce the provisions in the bill that we can agree on?
Okay. Ms. Gilliard?
I'm trying to, I know I'm late, but I'm trying to understand what we're doing. So let me tell you why. So the notice came out that we were having a special call meeting. And we knew that we were having a meeting to discuss all these bills. And then there were a couple of emails that came out that said, well, let's talk about some of the things that we want to change but don't want to change. So if we are only restricted to that, and is that what this is about? Is that what the meeting is about? We are only restricted to talking about those things that we want to change in the bill. Is that what this meeting is about?
That was
It's a
my
discussion of the
understanding.
House bill.
That was my
This is what
understanding.
this is
not
what
what's
I'm
on here.
asking. Well, then I might as well leave because none of the bills, not any of them, transparently and honestly, do I think we need to deal with. Not until, let me finish, not simply because no one on the front end sat down with us and said, let's have a conversation about this before all of these were taken. Okay? And so, no, let me finish. I still have it. I have the floor. So I don't know whether you talked about 921 or not.
We haven't got
That's
it
the
yet.
legal
We
bill.
haven't got
Which
it.
one are you talking about?
So we're talking about
1019.
1019 right now.
1019
Yes,
is the
ma'am.
24-page one.
Yes, ma'am.
1019 is the one that, that talks about running for office criteria, breach of the public trust, 5 votes to remove an elected official, the city manager's role. He's copied on all complaints from citizens that go to the departments. Mayor and council shall not discuss performance complaints, which we already know anyway. Mayor and council cannot sit in on personnel meetings. The mayor has no management authority or responsibility. And it just goes on and on to very detailed operations of the city. Is that their role? Is it their role to determine how the city is going to operate administratively? And throughout it, and when we go to the other bills, I'll go back to those. Throughout it, it just almost takes away all the power of the council. And my last comment, it has been proven through statistics, you can even ask the clerk and they can go back and look at it. Over 75% of the bills that we vote on, we do it unanimously. It's when that other stuff comes in that things start going haywire. So just because of whatever that is, to me, that does not necessitate changing this charter from a council manager's charter to a strong mayor's charter. That's what it does. Gives the mayor and the city manager all the power in the world.
Hold
I'm
on,
done
hold on a
with
minute.
1019.
I truly, that is not true. But that's okay. That's okay.
So-
Ms. Gomes, let me ask you a question.
Instead of,
Let me ask you a question. You called the meeting, right?
I did.
All of you all who agreed to the meeting, raise your hand.
I agree to
So
come
did
to
you
a meeting.
explain what the meeting was about?
Yes, it is to have a
Okay, let's
discussion
move on.
about the
Let's
House
move
bill.
on.
However, I would like for us to see if we can go into an executive session.
Madam Attorney, we got three reasons we can go into executive session. Does this fit any 3?
This would fit there are several things in here to deal with the employment, the hiring, the compensation, the dismissal of your public officers and employees. You could go in for that purpose.
Okay, Ms. Willis is next, and
Yes.
then Ms. Rob.
So I would like to clear up, because I don't wanna come across as being disingenuous. There was upfront discussion with several of us on this council, at least 4 of us, and it's no secret, not only have there been adversarial relationships amongst us, but there has been adversarial relationships between us and the state legislators. Now, Councilmember Gomes, Councilmember Rao, myself, and he wasn't in the room because we didn't want to violate quorum, but also Reeves, were given an opportunity to give feedback to the legislators. So on January 16th, I have a 3-page document that we sent legislators of things that we would like to see in the charter. So to say that the legislators did not communicate with us, That is absolutely not true. Now, any of us can go down anytime and meet with our state legislators. They have an open door policy. The problem is if you're adversarial with our state legislators, then they have a right to entertain you or not. To say that they don't have the right to tell us what to do is not true. House Bill 514 was put into existence through the General Assembly by our state legislators. We are supposed to govern according to the state charter. Who has the right to change our state charter? Our state legislators. The best thing for us to do is not to try to approach this in an adversarial way. The best thing for us to do is not speak to them through formal actions and resolutions. The best thing for us to do is, if we would like for them to change, make certain changes to these bills, is to talk about it, come to some consensus, and then go to them respectfully and say, this is what we have a problem with, and hope that they will listen to us, because they don't have to listen to us. They are state legislators, and the ball is in their court. Lastly, I would like to end this by saying, they didn't do this on their own. There were several constituents who asked them to make changes to this charter. Several constituents. They had a meeting that was requested of them by constituents last month at Cliftondale Art Center. It was about 60 people in that room, and several of my colleagues that were in that room as well. Several of those constituents asked them to make these changes. Several of those constituents are sending them emails asking them to approve these bills. So just like you have people who may be against this, you have people who is for this. So again, I ask that we come to some agreement and respectfully ask the state legislators to make some changes. Not demand through resolution, and not go to them in an adversarial way.
That's right.
I'm going to agree with quite a bit of what she said. I think after December, not only did we have opinions about what needed to be changed with the charter, constituents not only called us, but they also called that delegation, and I don't think we need to be naive about that. I think the difference is when we first heard, or when I first heard, that they were talking about changing our charter, I asked, and as Ms. Willis said, it was me, Councilwoman Gumbs, and Willis, but we didn't have a framework other than GMA's model charter.
Which is what I had for them.
The model charter, which unfortunately the delegation didn't use a framework that was independent of that. And we outlined some recommendations based on what we had experienced of having unclarity about our charter not being clear. And we did send out, but that looks very different than what we ultimately see. And so I also want us to be clear about that. GMA has a model charter for cities. That document is kind of the feedback we gave. And so I think at this point, going over that is really a waste of our time, and it's really a waste of our constituents' time. I think at this point, these bills have, many of them have already passed through the House. I think they will consider some of our feedback, but to just go back and forth and say, you know, hey, we didn't talk, we're past that. Those bills are moving, and we need to give them the feedback and figure out what we can and cannot live with and move forward.
Okay.
So
Councilwoman Gumbs?
So am I confused in the fact that the mayor attempted to set up a meeting and these individuals refused?
Let me clear that up. One of the House members, you know, before we had that conversation, had already tried to set a meeting up with us, and because they had a 2-week recess, that she could not get the notification of the room and everything to have the meeting until 3 days ago, okay? The others were simply saying that we just don't have enough time, crossover is coming up, other bills are in the hopper, and that's why they said they couldn't meet with us. No one ever said, no, I don't want to meet with y'all, I'm through with it. I didn't hear any of that.
So even still with that, they don't want to have well, right now, they can't have a conversation with us. They're not willing to meet with us. So what other way do we communicate
I didn't
other
say-
than through a resolution to say, these are the things that we don't want? But anyway, I had asked, can we go into executive session? I would like to go into executive session.
I'm not speaking.
Is that a motion?
I would like to make a motion to go into executive session.
Well, I move that we go into executive session for purposes of discussing.
Hey, who making the
personnel.
motion?
Well, no, I'm just
And we can discuss
Okay,
the
well, she's got-
resolution, that has been presented. But it also allows for us to have the opportunity, because there's some things that needs to be cleared up. It's becoming a mess, it is. Because you have.
So let me
just
get your motion straight. Now, she's
My
saying
motion
one
is
thing and you
moving
saying
to go
something
into
else.
executive session to discuss resolution that has been placed on the agenda for them to understand, and we'll come back out and deliberate and allow the
To
public to
discuss
know.
personnel as it relates to the House bills on.
Is there a resolution on the agenda?
Well, excuse me, to discuss personnel as it relates to the House bills.
Is there a second?
Second.
Probably move to second discussion?
Yes, I have to say something here. So I just want to make my statement and be clear on this stuff as I understand it. There was a hearing, all this day about a hearing, right here in this room, 9 hours. The legislative body, state delegation, from the legislators to the senators was here in this room. They was here in this room. And out of that, it resolved, it didn't get resolved, okay, it resolved in adjourning the meeting. But out of that, they said there are going to be changes to the charter. Because what the charter currently had was 2 contradicting sections in it. And it was, people were dwelling in the gray area. And the intent of the author of the charter was to make it clear about what the mayor can and cannot do. So all they was doing was going back to bring clarity to the charter so it can be just a black and white document and no gray area. And in the same bill of House Bill 1019 on lines 155 through lines 158, and I quote, "The mayor and council as elected officials shall possess fundamental oversight, duties, and responsibilities with respect to all operations and administration of city government, and the city manager shall be responsible and duty bound to facilitate the mayor and city council's oversight function," period. So, right, and it has been like that. But the clarity of what they are bringing now is bringing a black and white document to the charter and clearing up what the mayor can and cannot do, and it's still a council, city manager form of government. And that's all this brings up, and then the subsequent bills further on to dictate and understand the duties and roles and responsibilities we have, our city manager has, and our staff has. A lot of people dwell into the staff roles. And so that's just the clarity that I have, and I just wanted to make that statement. But they did have a meeting and talked about the charter changes.
But it was only 6
Let me-
people in that meeting.
Okay, excuse me,
I
It
didn't
was,
know
it was,
anything
it
about
was
it.
taped.
excuse me.
I
Let
didn't know
me,
anything about the meeting.
before we go in the back, because I don't want to lose nobody, let me just say a couple of things.
And I'm sorry, Mayor, I am on there for discussion when you're done.
Okay. Anyway, I have no desire to be a strong mayor. That's why he's over there. That's why he does the job that he does. I can't do his job. He does it very well. I'm definitely okay with being the mayor, a weak mayor. I'm fine with that. A lot of the changes that people are talking about, the powers, I have them now. Veto power, I have them now. In 3 years, I've only done 5 vetoes. God knows I probably should have done more. But I have not abused that power. It's already there. But there's an ambiguity in the way the law was written. And you see us going back and forth over this ambiguity. Become says, I don't have the power to do it, I do have the power to do that. It's an ambiguity in the way it's written. As it pertains to the this thing about the attorney. I don't care if Mr. Donald
Don't say
brings
that.
the attorney in.
Don't
All
say
right.
the other Don.
Mr. Donald. The attorney in. I really don't care. This thing about 3 appointments, and then I get to decide. I really don't care. If he became, if the appointment comes under Mr. Donald, it comes in employment of Mr. Donald, then by rights, he should be with Mr. Donald. And not me. And these insinuations about to want to be a strong mayor, want to be a strong mayor. I've been elected official for 18 years. I ain't never been a strong nothing when it comes to making decisions on my own. So I'm all right with it. We got to understand that there's so much emotion and stuff going on until we cannot sit down at a table with folks and collaborate and get things handled. You don't have to love this me, but you have to respect this chair. Now I'm talking, I better do get a chance to talk. I love this city. This is about 100,000 people. It ain't about no districts. This is about 100,000 people and our ability to do what's right. And our ability to change the way we do business so people can see us in another light and know that we're for 100,000 people and to do this right. That's a bad phone you got there, man. So that's what this is. That's what I think this is about. Those legislators, you know, he says, well, the man told the mayor. I can tell you right now, there's not one line in that bill that I authored. There was not one line. Don't believe me? Go talk to the legislators and ask them how much influence the mayor played in these bills. Don't ask me, ask Mr. Long. He's right there. How much did I play in these bills? So I'm saying is, these things moving along. Now you can sit and argue all you want between yourselves and talk about this and that, but until you put something on this table that says, I want to change this and I want to change that, and we get back to the table with them and try to get as much as we can out of it, you're just wasting your time. We might as well stop this meeting right now. If you want to argue, we'll stop the meeting right now because we're not going to get anywhere.
Well, we're not going to argue then.
We've been arguing.
No,
So all
that's
I'm
why
saying,
we asked you to go to
excuse me,
executive
we're
session.
gonna go into executive session. I just wanna put that out, because for me as mayor, I get tired of the assumptions that what the mayor did, what the mayor has been doing, or what the mayor's influence has done. Go talk to the legislators yourself and ask them what I've done. Just go talk to them. Their doors are open. That's like if I did go, the doors that was open to me is open to everybody on this table, at this table. So I can't tell you why you didn't go, or now you wanna, nobody told us nothing. And I'm through. We're gonna take Ms. Gilliard and we're gonna get Mr. Khalid. I have you, sir.
And do you have me?
No, I don't. I can't see that far. Sometimes we gotta say something. We're still in discussion on, and then we're going into executive session. Ms. Gilliard, Mr. Khalid, and then Mr. Baker, then we're going to executive session.
I just want to make the point that because I don't agree does not mean that I'm trying to be disruptive or whatever. I'm just trying to be transparent and honest and talk about how I feel about the bills. about all of them. And specifically in certain sections, because I took the time to go through each one of them and read every line, and thank God I can comprehend what I read, okay? And I can see how things have changed from what they are now, and the fact that, to me, the charter, you know, doesn't have all the problems that some people might think they do have. But that is just my opinion. So I just wanted to put that out there. And I also wanted to put out there that it has definitely changed dramatically. And as we go through each bill, I'm here to show you exactly how.
Okay. Mr. Khalid.
Mr. Mayor, he talked about wanting to change the way we do things. I agree. I think one of the first things we need to change is we need to stop running back into executive session. And I think that we need to have.
Well, then y'all need to stop fighting in public.
I think that, well, first of all, I think that we need to understand that a discussion is not necessarily a fight. And that we can disagree without being disagreeable.
Yeah.
We are the founding mothers and fathers of this city. And the same way that this country had founding mothers and fathers that had serious disagreements about the role of government, about the size of government, about the balance of powers, that is what we are doing. We are part of a grand democratic experiment of black people having free will to self-determine how they want their government to be and how they wanted to provide services. So we need to learn how to have conversations and dialogues that are not fights. That's the first thing that I would change.
Okay.
The next thing that I would change is how we as a council work together. Because we can't govern what state reps do, but we need to govern ourselves a little bit better. And so first I want to be clear when we're talking about discussions. What I see as this agenda item is not a discussion about recommendations for the House bills. It says a council discussion on the proposed House bills. So part of that discussion is not just the recommendations themselves, but if we ever hope to truly change the way we do things, then we need to have a conversation about how we got here. So, Mr. Reeves, you talked about the hearing that we had on December 29th, which was actually the 5th hearing that we had. We spent 62 days having a hearing talking about something that never got resolved. Part of the way that we get where we get to is because we start the conversations, and then when they get rough, we all go in our corners and we don't finish the conversation. Part of the conversation on the 29th is the same, and that whole hearing is the same conversation that we're having now. Is that cliques of us have information that we don't share with the rest of council. What you all heard just now was that in January, it's March, 2 months ago, 3 council people sat down with state legislators.
No, not true.
And then they talked to a 4th council person.
Not true.
But there are 3 other council people that didn't know anything about those conversations. So what I want you to be clear about is, because I have talked to my state rep, like I've talked to my state rep and I've talked to the state rep that I am the councilman for. They're actually 2 different people. And what I'm clear about is that they are all talking to each other about all of us. And we are here siloing off the information that we have and not sharing it with everyone on our team. And that is why our team keeps losing. And so I just want to see us do a better job of talking with each other. And if we have to do that in public so that you all keep us honest about how we behave with each other, because it doesn't always happen when we go back in those rooms. So if we need to do it out here in front of our families so that our uncles and aunties can keep us honest in this conversation and keep us civil, then that is what we should do.
Okay, Mr. Baker, and then we'll go. Mr. Baker?
Yes, sir. Thank you. I just want to say that I was one of those council members that Councilwoman Willis mentioned was at that meeting shortly after the December hearings with our state delegation who said that there would be changes to the charter. But there's a caveat to that meeting that nobody wants to acknowledge, but the public who was there, that being those 60 people that our pro tem mentioned. The resolve in that meeting was that the infighting and the negativity that you may see from our passionate discussions as a council exists as well with them. And that they needed to get their house in order before they came to ours. And the resolve from the public yielded that. We actually left and ended that meeting on that note. So that's something that we can't go without acknowledging. Secondly, there was a question to our attorney at our very last city council meeting on last Tuesday by Councilman Khalid. He wanted to broach the conversation about a particular bill that many of us didn't have clarity on, and it was clear that the public was in the dark on it as well. And I think it was I think ultimately our attorney wasn't allowed to speak in reference to it. But when I brought attention to it, the mayor respectfully said that he would acknowledge it and bring it to the public before it goes further. However, I just noticed, and I thought that this was part of it, but I noticed that he didn't call the meeting because he asked who called the meeting, and it was the pro tem. So I'm glad that she called the meeting, because we're supposed to be in front of you discussing these items as we discussed at the last council meeting. Now, what I learned just by sitting here, Councilwoman Willis actually contradicted the mayor by saying that we can go and have these conversations with our legislature if we have the relationships. Their doors are open to us.
That's not what I said.
Now, it seems, well, I mean, I'm glad that
Go ahead,
it's
Mr.
recorded.
Baker.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I mean, so it's recorded so we can still figure out what was said earlier. But the point of it is, if all of us don't have quote unquote said relationships like that, they have the discretion, from what I heard, to listen to us, hear us out, or not. And if that's the case, it comes back to the initial question when Councilman Khalid had the floor and asked, how did this stuff come about, and who received this information about these bills? And he yielded that it was the mayor after no one said anything. So this stuff has been going on for some time. Our mayor stated he has no desire for ... no desire, semantic response as far as he doesn't want to be a strong mayor. Got it, clear, good. However, these bills are still here that will render those rights to him to a certain extent. And I think that there was another question that went unanswered because the resolve was, let's point out the issues that we have with said bills, as opposed to the initial question of, will this be retroactive or not? Because I think that if we had an answer to that question, we would probably find out how personal it is or not. Because if it's not applicable to us immediately, I think it would be less personal and less passion spewed amongst myself and my colleagues about how we got here. So nobody has answered that question. I don't know when we go to executive session or not if that question will be answered back there or even can be asked, because it's regarding a gray area of personnel. So that's why I say I agree that we should continue the conversation, but allow these questions that will ultimately be asked in executive session to be asked in the public.
Well, we can handle that right now. Let's take a vote on executive session. All those in favor? That passes for lack of full vote. I mean, that
Fails.
fails for lack of full vote.
We can't say that we heard,
Ms. Willis, and then I got Ms.
development, all of that stuff.
So, here lies the issue. Now, we were going through these bills, and we were getting, recommendations accomplished until certain colleagues showed up and wanted to, take a adversarial route. I would like to ask that we go back to what we was doing, which is go through, point out things that we don't agree on, write them down, record them, turn the things over to our CLEO, Chief Elected Local Officer, let him take them to the legislators, along with our lobbyists, and then respectfully ask if they will make changes. We can't make them do anything at this point, but what we can do is respectfully ask. Again, what I did say is each of us have the same opportunity to go and sit down with our legislators. What I did say is that they will not entertain adversarial conversations, and they have a right to do that or not do that. If somebody is adversarial, if someone is constantly putting out newsletters with information that's not factual, that's creating an adversary relationship. You could go down and speak with them, be an adult about it, they can agree with you and disagree with you. Just like residents. Residents come to me all the time with ideas. If I agree with the policy change, I agree. If I don't, I don't. And I move on. So can we please go through this like we were doing without all of the negative rhetoric? And December 30th is a result. These bills are a result of December 30th. And the result, there was a result. We decided to we decided to adjourn, and that's how we chose to resolve it. So we need to stop bringing up December 30th. It's over with. It's done with. Move on. Let's get through these bills. Write down what we want changed. Give it to our mayor. If you decide you want to go down and talk to the legislators, you go down and talk to the legislators as well. Because you best believe there are residents who are still advocating for these bills. Okay. And they have a right to.
Councilwoman Rao.
I think we should try to pick up and get through as many of these bills as possible.
Okay.
I think the most effective thing we could show is that we could find at least a majority vote on some of these things and share that collectively as one unit and send that to the delegation. That is a huge first step right there.
Mr. Baker?
So if this is a conversation that we would have in executive session, I believe that I have to overtly disagree as I would in executive session. I think that there is a climate that if we go through all of these bills, there's some things that we're going to agree is okay. There's going to be some things that we're going to disagree on. And I think that if we submit changes of the things that we're favorable towards, it's sending a misrepresentation about how we really feel about the actions that they've taken. I think that we should make a motion to submit a letter on behalf of the council acknowledging the way that we feel like this was done inappropriately. I think that we report to the same customers that they do. I think that we have state senators that we report to, and it's not a done, we have state senators that report to our same residents as we do. And I believe that it's not set in stone yet. I believe that these bills are not law yet. That's why we have the discretion to add to and wish that they would be willing to take away from. So I think that we should rethink going through trying to piecemeal something that they've given us that we disagree with. And come together as at least a quorum of us saying we disagree with the way that they've done it and ask them to reconsider it.
Well, Mr. Baker, you have the ability to make a motion for that if you'd like.
Well, you actually have a document that Councilwoman Gumbs has proposed that pretty much does what you just.
Right, well, I would like to make a motion to approve said document written by Mayor Pro Tem Councilwoman.
Since we just got this document,
May I-
and we're sitting up here.
Hold up. Is there a second?
Second.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, point of order, please. Point of order, okay. First of all, this resolution, this is a special call meeting, and correct me if I'm wrong, where's Madam Clerk? This is not on the agenda to be voted on. For a special call meeting, in order to vote on something, it has to be on the agenda.
Madam Attorney?
So I'm not aware where that requirement is in your code. What you do have is you have a limitation that says that if you have a special called meeting, your discussion has to be limited to the topic of that meeting. For example, today you're talking about these House bills. You wouldn't be able to instead say, okay, let's talk about something that had nothing to do with these. So as long as your discussion pertains to this topic, then you are at liberty to decide what your actions will be.
So, I disagree with how you opine, because what's on this agenda, what is on this agenda, and I have a right, yes, she's the attorney, but I have a right to agree with the attorney. It says, number 1, meeting call to order, number 2, roll call, number 3, agenda items, number 1, council discussion of proposed Senate House bills, council discussion of proposed Senate House bills, executive session, personnel litigation, real estate, adjournment of meeting. There's nothing on this agenda regarding this resolution. So you all can move forward, but I reserve the right to take, if this is voted on today, to send this to the Attorney General and ask for his opinion on whether or not this is a violation of Sunshine Law.
Madam Attorney, do you agree this is a part of the discussion, this resolution?
Yes, I agree
Okay, that's all
fully
right.
that this deals with the subject of.
That's all I need to know. Did I get a second?
Yes.
Okay, you got a second, the properly moved, a second. All those in favor?
Oh, what? I'm sorry, y'all lost me, I was talking.
Would you, Mr. Clerk, would you read, take the motion?
Resolution.
Yeah, motion was made to approve the resolution submitted, resolution to South Fulton Senators requesting the tabling of the 2020 disputed House bills, HB 1019, HB 921, HB 925, HB 1028, HB 986, and HB 1048, and encouragement of an intergovernmental collaboration between the South Fulton local House delegation and the city of South Fulton. The motion was made by Councilmember Baker and seconded by Councilmember Khalid.
Any further discussion? Yes. Hold on, Ms. Gomes.
So some of the unreadiness with a few of my colleagues, they're saying that one, this resolution is adversarial. I don't see it as being adversarial. There was some things that were changed. I believe in the communication piece of it. I think that if we are going to have our lobbyists go in and speak with, the senators and ask for a meeting, to request or whatever, but at this point in time, we would like to have some recommendations to accompany this resolution. I think we can get that part, but at least also at the same time understand that we want them to communicate with us in regards to this. And I think that is probably the pulse of most of the council that is on here. Now, granted, there have been some, state legislators that have spoken with some of us. We did sit down and do the model charter. However, those recommendations, just as Councilwoman Rouse stated, does not look like anything that we've submitted. So I am asking that we do have the conversation with our senators to see if they can ask us to either slow down the process so we can have the opportunity to caucus with our local delegation. And Mayor, this came about after you said that you've attempted and they were unable to have that meeting. So that's the position I'm in regards to at least asking for that type of communication.
All right, Ms. Gilliard?
Councilwoman Gum, I completely agree. It really needs to be slowed down. Some of the bills have already passed the House and are on their way to the Senate. And so if we don't do something, this is just, it's too much. It's really too much. And so I totally agree that that would at least get their attention, and that would even give us time to submit, and I don't know how we do that, but to submit for each one of these bills, you know, whatever it is that anyone wants to change or not change.
Ms. Willis?
I think that this resolution is adversarial. I don't think it's in compliance with the Sunshine Law. I am going to seek opinion from the Attorney General. I do think that we should not speak to our legislators via resolution. I think we should speak with them with a conversation, a respectful conversation, respectfully asking them to do what we would like for them to do. This resolution is not going to stop anything. This resolution is not going to do anything but make them make us appear more adversarial. And I would like to remind you that last year, four of my colleagues got together and put forth a resolution to slow down some legislation and stop nothing. So this is not worth the ink that's on paper, and we should try to be an adult and respectfully ask our legislators to do what we want of them, not try to mandate them through a resolution that means nothing to them.
Mr. Reeves?
I'm gonna yield to Councilman Khalid. I'm trying to get
Mr. Khalid?
So one, I want to be clear that seeking an opinion from the AG, that is adversarial. Especially if the majority of this council votes to do this resolution and then you go seek an opinion from an AG, which opens our city up to like violations of Georgia state law, that's adversarial to us. It's adversarial to your colleagues, and it's unnecessary. I think that we can walk and chew gum at the same time. This isn't an either or, it's a both and. We can make this recommendation, and then we can continue with we can make this resolution to our state reps, and then we can continue with the recommendations that we're creating. We can submit both the resolution and the recommendation, and we can continue having personal conversations with our state reps. So I think that we should do all of those things. I think we have time to do all those things. Well, I know that I have another meeting here at 5 o'clock, so, yeah.
Madam Attorney, I just want to have clarification on special call meetings because it doesn't really specify, but can any action be taken in a special call meeting?
Yeah, so I'm not aware of anything that limits your actions, like for example, that would say you can only do this motion, or you can only do 2 motions instead of 6, or you have to be done within a certain time frame. So I'm not aware of anything that restrains you in that meeting, with the exception that it says that you must stick to the topic that is the purpose of that special meeting. And that's a due process issue, to make sure that someone doesn't call a meeting in such short notice, and then you would not attend because you might say, I'm comfortable with you guys talking about that topic in my absence, and then you don't attend, and then all of a sudden you bring up the second issue. And that would create a due process conflict. The only limitation I'm aware of in your charter as far as your rights while you have a special meeting is that you must stick to the topic that you've advised each other and the public that you plan to speak about.
Right, and in your experience in the other cities that you have represented, is it a normal practice to take action in special call meetings?
It is a normal practice, and the city has routinely taken actions at its special meetings since inception.
In other cities, I'm saying?
Well, this city as well as other cities that we represent,
Okay.
as well as other cities that I'm aware of.
Okay, I just want to get clarity on that.
Madam Attorney, before we go to the next person, would you provide for them that portion of the chart that speaks to that?
Yes,
Not
Section
just-
3.3.
It
Let's
is.
do it right now.
Yes, I have it. Can you please provide that?
So do you want me to send it by email, or do you want me, are you asking me to give the
Can you put it on
subsection
record,
right now?
please? Yes, the
Yeah,
subsection.
It's in section 3.13 in the charter.
Is that correct?
Let me make sure I have your charter pulled up.
I have it. It's,
Ms. Willis?
Yeah, it's section 3.13, and I'm actually just reading it. I can tell you some of the language I was referring to. It says,
starting with line 509.
Well, no, I'm not gonna read the whole thing, but I'm gonna read what I think is applicable to what some of your concerns are. It says, and this is line 516, it says, only the business stated in the call may be transacted at the special meeting. So that means that your transactions are limited to the business that you stated you would discuss, and that business here would be the House bills.
Right, gotcha. Okay, Ms. Rob?
I just want to make a suggestion, because we're now an hour and 16 minutes into this. We have 6 bills. I think it's very naive if we think that we're gonna stop these bills. I really do. I think we can influence them. I think there are things that, frankly, if we were to be honest, we do need to have clarified in our charter, because we've stumbled over them. And we just should focus on going through each bill, talking about the things. They're not all bad, period. They're not. And I think if we talked to them, we were going at a pretty good clip. We was almost halfway through the first bill, which was the long bill.
We definitely were.
And I think if we go line by line, everybody said they have feedback, we compile it on one document and we share it. And then I think we can figure out what on this resolution that we feel like we could tweak the words so it's not adversarial. That's the smaller part, if we can figure out what we agree on.
I agree with that. How many people,
Did I ask you?
just as a straw poll, how many people agree with that to go through the bills and
I'm willing to.
I'm in agreement with that, but we do have a vote on pending.
I understand.
Do you think it would help to, I know the public is not seeing this, do you think it would help to read it to the public?
No.
I think.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Let's vote.
What are we voting on?
But not adopting as is, are we able to go and amend it? There's some things that just need to be amended.
Yes, you can amend this at your discretion, it's your call on the form that it's adopted.
Well, we would need to
No,
amend
what
that
you're
before we
voting,
vote on it.
excuse me, you're voting on the resolution as it is today.
Well, I think that's the current motion.
So let's withdraw.
Right, that's exactly right.
Correct.
That's my motion.
Okay, so let me see a show of hands, all those in favor?
I don't want,
That fails for like a 3 vote.
I want it to
Four
be
votes,
amended. There's some changes that I want.
Make motion.
So I like to make a motion to approve the resolution in front of us, but I would like to strike the whereas, which is at line 50. I think we need to strike that language, take that whereas out.
950, Madam Attorney,
Line 50 and line 54.
and line 54.
It's a complete paragraph.
So is it that entire paragraph or the?
Yeah.
Hold up. I understand everybody wants, that's why I got this pad. I'm gonna write your name down.
I think we can strike whereas 36 through 39. So, one of the council members have asked if we can strike disputed House bills and just put 2020 House bills. So can you strike through disputed?
Yes,
Do
just
I-
take out the word disputed wherever it appears.
Yes.
Wherever it appears, word.
And that's, resolution to South Fulton Senators. So a resolution to South Fulton Senators requesting encouragement of intergovernmental collaboration between the South Fulton Local House Delegation and the City of South Fulton. And that's the headline.
Okay, so I would just remove the term disputed from the headline.
Is that right?
Disputed and table.
A resolution to South Fulton Senators requesting an encouragement of intergovernmental collaboration between the South Fulton Local House Delegation and the City of South Fulton. The bills are already mentioned throughout the document, so you can just remove that out of there.
Okay. So I'll delete everything between requesting and that comes before the word encouragement.
Yes.
Any further? What's your, you have a second?
Do I have a second?
Sure, I'll second it.
Yeah, I did.
I have
Any
a question.
discussion?
I have a question.
No, let me get Ms. Gilliard.
I want to know why questioning the bills is considered adversarial. Mr. Van,
I don't think it's that.
I don't either.
No, so I don't.
I just wanted to put that out there.
I didn't
Okay.
think it was adversary, but
No.
Is that mentioned?
it's the
No,
tone.
no,
No,
It's the tone.
I'm not referring to what you just talked about, Councilwoman. Not at all.
I don't think
It was earlier that was.
we got to vote on the motion.
Okay, Ms. Willis?
Yes, a resolution to South Fulton Senators requesting
And encourage.
and encouragement into governmental collaboration between the South Fulton Local House Delegation and the City of South Fulton. Is that how it's gonna read?
Yes,
And then you all are taking opposing and disputing and all of that stuff out of it?
that's correct.
Okay, I'm okay.
Well, actually, if I could clarify, because I have down specific things that you guys have said, which may or may not be consistent, so my changes right now are, I will have a resolution to South Fulton Senators, and then I'll change it to encouraging intergovernmental collaboration between the City of South Fulton Local House Delegation and the City of South Fulton. And then I will remove in its entirety the whereas clause between 36 and 39. I'll remove the term disputed as it appears here throughout, and then I'll move in its entirety the whereas that is section 50 through 53.
Yes, yes, that's correct.
Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Baker, and then we'll take a vote.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I protest the removal of the word disputed, because that's why we're here. And I think that we're cosmetically creating a document that we're trying to soften, when we all know that we are in protest of these House bills. So I just wanted to say that for the record. I mean, to soften it cosmetically is to no avail.
Okay, let's vote, please. All those, let's vote. All those in favor?
On
That
his,
passes.
on his,
No.
on hers.
On hers.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna support it.
Okay.
Okay, so,
Yeah, we gotta do that.
Huh?
So it's clear, support.
All
Taking
who
out
support,
the-
raise your hand again. 1, 2, 3,
of the
4, 5.
resolution with changes.
Right,
We'll change it.
Encouraging collaboration.
yeah, okay, perfect.
So now we want to be able to move on these bills.
Their feedback.
The way this thing is written, you already said what you want to say.
Yeah, we just encouraging collaboration.
But do you, the recommendations,
Or what we want, this should accompany with still what we want changed in these bills.
and I think that's what Mr. Long.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do it then.
Okay.
Where do we stop off?
1019.
I found a section that, okay, section 13, what I mentioned earlier, said act is further amended by revising subsection E of subsection 4.10 as follows. Assert the fire chief and police chief, the city manager may suspend or terminate directors or department heads so long as the city attorney reviews the facts supporting suspension and concurs such action inappropriate before action is taken. The city manager may suspend or terminate the fire chief or police chief provided majority of city council vote to approve such suspension or termination. I think that should be taken out. If we are not to have any direction of or control or interfere with staff, they are considered staff of the city manager, and we should not be involved with why, hopefully that never happens, but why the city manager may consider disciplinary action against any of his employees.
All right. Any other suggestions?
Well, can you, so it's clear for the record what the consensus of the council is? I think if each of you just tell how you feel, and the record's just gonna be full of how each of you individually feel, which is not gonna provide anyone with any guidance. I think if you guys collectively want something proposed, then you need to agree on each change and say, this is the change that we want.
As one document.
As one body.
So that's section 13, just line
So-
309 through 314. What I'm asking to remove from there is the whole section, really the whole, well, no, I think that it's the whole section.
All right, is there a consensus to that? That's what we're looking for?
Section, I'm sorry.
Is that-
Section lines 309 through 314, right now, they're asking to change that majority of council approved suspension or termination. I'm asking that we don't get involved in that. These are city manager employees, and he should have direction over control.
So
Is
delete
there a
307.
consensus?
I agree.
Okay, we have consensus.
So
Is
delete.
there, I'm sorry, well, can we call out what the votes are?
She taking them.
I can't, because I can't see all the hands.
Excuse me a minute, excuse me. Let me recognize all the hands. I can't see hands, and that's why I got duplication peripheral vision. But that's 1, 2, 3, 4.
Section 13, line 309 through 314.
Deleting section 13.
Right.
Right, 307 through 314.
The next one, who got the next one? Go ahead.
Should we go back to the ones we had went through?
No, they had all of those.
But we
No, we didn't do the consensus they wanted from the city attorney. We can go back and do that.
Okay, it should be quick. Line 33 was the first one.
Why don't you let them call out what you record, because they record it.
Line,
You're not right.
okay, line 33, seeking that currently says, shall have a resident of the district from which he or she seeks election for is currently 6 months. I said that I think it should be 12 months, consistent with what is required to run for office in the city of Southwood. I don't understand why the period would be shorter.
Okay, there's consensus? Consensus to it? Show of hands. Okay, there's consensus. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, go with those.
Okay, line 87 through 89. We're saying, line 87 through line 98, basically omit that section. I think what I mentioned when Senator James' bill came back, we said that we should follow the process for state law, which says an action, which is also in our local ordinance, an action to remove the mayor or council member arising from misconduct, malfeasance, nonfeasance, malpractice of willful neglect of the official while in the office pursuant to Charter Section 2-107, as it should be amended from time to time, shall be accompanied by one of the following methods, as provided by OCG 45-5-61, and shall be amended from time to time, or by order of the Fulton County Superior Court following a hearing on a complaint seeking such removal brought by any resident. So it would go to Fulton County Superior Court.
What section is that?
This is page, lines 87 through 98, and that's what we adopted in our local ordinance.
Right, that's what I was gonna say.
Yes. Okay, let's have a consensus.
Mayor, I was discussion, if you don't mind. No, I don't know, but I had something, I wanted to, just say that we're just, I would like
Let me
to.
just do this first. It passed by consensus, but go
Right,
ahead.
yeah, and I agree, but, I just wanna add to that note that we're just making it consistent with what's in our current ordinance. The conflict is the charter and our current ordinance.
All right, go ahead, Ms. Brown.
Line 170.
Wait, are we voting on that?
No, we had consensus on the one, that one. We're going to something else.
Did you get my?
Yes, we got you.
So line 170, we need clarity on the ground for disapproval. This would be easier with purchase cards made via check or, I said would be easier with purchases made via check or purchase order, but would be difficult with purchasing cards. Line 170.
Is there consensus?
To remove lines?
Or we can look at it, maybe really what it should say, oh, we did talk about removing it. So I guess we need to figure out what language. We talked about this being, and the city manager said, this is not appropriate relationship in terms of, he reports to us, he's checking us, like that's a no-win.
It's the deal where we
Right.
want to approve all the money expenditures, I think that's crazy.
Should it be the finance that shall be subject to review by the?
I think it should be taken out.
It needs to be taken out.
Okay,
So,
Ms. Cleve, they said it needs to be
I-
taken.
I'm with that.
Okay, can I get
So-
a consensus?
okay, I can
So
deal with
that's, it starts on line 168 with the word
Right.
any expenditure.
Yes.
it. So delete from there until the end of 171.
Okay.
but can
Go ahead, go ahead.
Okay, so this is what I had said. The city manager should have the authority to have expenditures forensically audited. I don't want that taken out.
I'm okay with that too.
All right.
Okay,
The
so
city manager or the mayor?
it's, no, the city manager.
City
The city
manager.
manager is responsible for the day-to-day
Jeez.
operations, oversee
No, I
budgets.
thought you had the.
So,
in the charter.
we haven't got to him yet, but the city manager should definitely have the authority
Yes.
to have expenditures
already has
forensically
it.
audited.
He already has it. So why is it
It's a
necessary?
lot of things you
Mayor,
already
I have
have.
the
But why is it necessary to put it in? here?
May I have the floor?
You have the floor, Ms. Willis.
I would like for that to remain, if I can get consensus, Councilmember Riley, I'm okay with the city manager having the authority to leave such expenditures forensically audited.
Okay,
I'm
you okay
fine
with that?
I am.
All right, let's get a consensus on that. Ms. Cleve, you all heard that part?
Yes.
Okay, let's get a consensus, please. 1, 2, I pass this with 4. Go ahead, what's your next one, Ms. Riley?
Okay, line 175. And I think, what we said is, special meetings of the city council shall be held on call of the mayor or 5 members of the council. And I think,
Change from 4 to 5.
yeah, that is a change.
I think it should be.
What line item we on, please?
But y'all wanna say
Number
majority?
4.
Whatever it is, I also wanna know who called the meeting. True, that was what I was saying.
So you saying keep it to 5 and you want to acknowledge who called the meeting?
I think it should,
Well, right now it's 4.
Right.
But it would increase it to 5.
Right,
Why should we change?
Are we in discussion about that?
yes, we are.
So, look,
Mr. Khalid has the
Go
floor.
ahead.
I think changing to 5 changes what a quorum is. Like, I'm not really clear if that, again, I mean, I have these legal questions. So if we say that, does that mean that 4 people can now meet and discuss city business and it's not a quorum? I think that whatever the quorum number is, that should be consistent for everything. So if 4 people make a quorum, then it should only take 4 people to call a meeting. When you get into a thing where it takes 5 people to call a meeting, then you get into this shady legal area where it's 4 people still a quorum.
it's no consistency.
So I think we should keep it at 4.
Okay?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Bacon.
I can go?
Yes, yes.
Okay, in regards to adding who called the meeting, I just have a little pushback only because we talk so much about divisiveness. If I call the meeting and I get 3 more people, and now we have a quorum, and now the public reads, and we all are going together saying, who called this meeting, what's the point? I think that it takes away from the unification of council. If a quorum of us call the meeting, we're having a meeting.
Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Mr. Bacon, Mr. Reed.
For clarity's sake, are you, Dr. Rowell, are you asking the person who called the quorum and that's it? Or are you asking for the person who called the quorum plus the people who agreed?
I'm not trying to touch the quorum at all. I think, well, we can go either way. I'm just saying there have been times that we have said a special meeting was called and then it was unclear who actually called the meeting. And I think for the transparency of the public, it's a good thing to do. It doesn't matter if you sitting up and you're voting on whatever, you see that anyway. But I want to know who called the meeting.
Now, I'm in agreement with that, of who called the meeting, but
Right.
not necessarily who the 3 other people who went along.
Well, you have to have four people, go ahead.
If you don't mind.
I don't,
Well, the mayor doesn't mind.
Well, he's
I'm saying you, I'm deferring.
Okay, so yeah, I don't, so everything that we do doesn't have to be in the charter, right? Like, we just need to create a practice of council. We can be clear on council about who called a meeting without putting in public notice, this is Carmelita Gumb's meeting, or this is Mark Baker's meeting. If we put it in the charter, then what we're saying is that that has to go on the notice. And so I agree with Councilman Baker about the teamwork. And then behind the scenes, we just need to do a better job of communicating with one another. So I think that every change that we're thinking about doesn't have to be in the charter.
okay.
I can
Okay.
live with that.
Okay.
So we're gonna ignore that.
Ms.
Does
Williams?
anybody else, as y'all moving through, if y'all have other lines, y'all should call them out.
I
Well,
just
the
think,
telephone portion is not practical.
Right.
well,
The email is what you've been doing consistently, so I mean, to me, it makes more sense to notify you by email versus having someone
line is that?
physically call it.
177.
Emails it down.
177.
What if it's an emergency, emails it down?
And not even text them, they don't.
Or you could say email,
Nobody has
what,
fax machines
what does state
anymore.
law say? What does state law say?
state law doesn't have a requirement of how you notify each other for your special meetings. State law is more concerned with the public being notified versus you guys notifying each other.
So line 188,
Can I ask the clerk, because you just went over this in our training, does state law, say anything about how we should notify you, the clerk, if we want to call a special meeting?
Oh, notify me, no, but this is.
Well, I meant
This
the
is-
role of clerk, I'm sorry,
This
not you
is,
specifically.
no, this is referring to how we notify you all that a special call meeting is done, by personally or by telephone, and I believe in the sunshine law, it states the same information.
Okay.
We're looking it up right quick.
Okay, Mr. Khalid? I'm sorry, she's not finished.
So, I just want, I agree with Councilmember Rowell. I think that whenever we call special meetings for transparency purposes, we should know who the quorum of who's calling a special call meeting, or the mayor, you have the authority to call special meetings, right?
I have that anyway.
Right, so,
but even if you called it, it would say the mayor
Fine.
should call me.
I'm fine with that.
and I also, I'm okay with the 5, because it helps cut down on people calling frivolous special call meetings, because we went through a lot of that over the holidays. People didn't care about people's holidays, people didn't care about people's families, they were just frivolously calling special call meetings. So, we can agree to disagree, but I'm okay with the 5, with the super majority.
Ms. Khalid, I had you down, I don't know whether you,
Well,
Go
I
ahead.
have other issues, but we should vote on this.
okay? So what, you wanna restate what we're trying to get a, consensus on? 'Cause
We're
I
trying
heard
to
a
get
lot
a
of that.
consensus on whether or not it should stay at 4 or change to 5 members to call.
So I'll make a motion that it stays at
No,
4.
don't make a motion, just say yes for consensus.
Well, I think we probably need to vote on them individually, because it sounds like we have to
Yes,
disagree.
I agree.
So I would like to call for the consensus for the 4, and that's it.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
I really need to say that.
So,
But give me a consensus,
So,
there a
yeah.
consensus? Yes, there is. Yes, okay, what's the other piece, Mr. Cleve?
Are you done with all of your pieces?
No, I'm talking about the same thing.
Oh.
Okay, what other
Yeah, no, I got
section-
other, yeah.
What other section in that we need to
so
get?
we're gonna go through all
No,
of
no, no,
hers
Mr.
and all
Mayor.
of mine and up?
No.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Mayor.
Okay, did we list all of your?
No.
I think Ms.
I'm talking about in this one section I'm
Right, in
talking
this
about.
one section, I
Right.
think the second part was whether we would have the who called the meeting.
Right.
So he wanted to break them up.
Okay, yeah,
Well, no, that's it. We have consensus before, then we're done.
No, we're not.
The
Because
second
the
part
consensus
was,
is my pushback earlier about whether we're gonna state who called the meeting, and I contend that we don't.
Okay, let's
If we
deal with
agree.
that. Let's deal with that.
Right.
Okay, let's get a consensus on that.
I second.
Is there a consensus?
and we're
And
voting
your,
on
Mr.
not
Baker, and
to.
Mr. Baker is not to put anybody's name, am I correct, or just?
Correct. If we're gonna agree.
Okay,
to have
Mr.
the
Baker's
meeting, just have the meeting.
deal is not to put anybody's name on it.
Can
Can we get a consensus on that?
Are we still in
Can I ask a
discussion?
question?
we still in discussion?
We've been discussing.
I want to make
but
a
I think
point
we
that,
need to- Make your point, Mr.
my
Briggs.
point, my point is, when someone decides that we should have a special meeting, they send the email out calling for it, so we all know who it is.
But the
It's
public.
the public they're talking about.
We're saying.
Okay,
I'm saying
But she already said it.
okay, so listen. Mr. Guns, make your point, and then we're gonna ask for consensus.
Oh, no, I was just gonna ask what was the concern, because the clerk said she already does that.
No, she didn't.
So you saying now that you've started that, right?
No, with you all, on this last one, I listed who called the meeting, but as far as the public is concerned, I just say the city council or the mayor and city
So
council.
you saying on your notice to go out, you will put council members?
If you vote on it,
Okay.
Okay, do we have a consensus?
and if this bill passes,
If there's a consensus on Mr. Baker's recommendation,
To not put the name.
To
to not put the
To
name.
keep it like it is.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Do we have a
To be
consensus?
honest.
That fails for lack of full votes. I mean,
yeah.
So
So-
now are we changing it?
Yes.
okay?
Do we
What's
need
the-
to have, I'm sorry, do we need to have a vote on that? Because we haven't taken a vote on that.
No.
We're gonna take consensus on everything. All right.
That's what we just
Okay.
did. We
No, you
voted.
didn't. No, you did not. The
Yes,
consensus
ma'am.
was whether you have, whether you will put the name on it or not.
And we said, no,
Right.
we don't agree with his motion, so
Right.
that if we agree not to leave the name off, that means we agree to put the names on.
Not necessarily. We had said in the beginning of this meeting that we make sure that we have consensus on everything. That does not give consensus. So if y'all wanna make, somebody want to make that
Okay.
recommendation.
So I make a recommendation, we put notice for special call meeting, who's called the meeting?
Second,
Okay,
For special call meeting.
okay, let's get a consensus, please.
I get consensus.
All right, that passed.
Question,
Now, did we put everybody who agree?
question.
Yeah, it's, no,
We haven't been doing that with anything
Everybody
else.
did agree?
on this particular thing?
Yeah.
She's recording.
No, I'm saying, like, do we put everybody's name, who called the meeting and who?
So on the special call notice that goes out to the public, at the bottom of it, it would say, meeting was called by A, B, C, D, and E.
Madam Clerk, is this standard operating procedure for other cities?
Yes. It has been done before in other municipalities, yes.
Okay. What's the next item?
Line 184, the same section, it doesn't need to say Fulton County's legal organ, the city of South Fulton.
All right, that makes sense. Anybody get any problem with that? Let's give a consensus vote.
Just show your hand.
That's
That's
consensus.
unanimous.
I just, can I comment too, I mean, there's a risk, they have this in here, but there's always a risk when you deal with notice requirements. I mean, my recommendation is always to go with what the state law requires, to make sure that you're consistent with what state law is here.
Absolutely.
So if they change this, then you would just need to be sure that you have two requirements that you have to adhere to. You'd have to adhere to the state law requirements, and then you'd have to create your own little subsection that would be applicable to the city to adhere to that too. Generally, you adhere to state law requirements for public notice purposes.
Yeah. I think the public, and we will do that, it's just the fact of how the document's gonna read.
Right, and our charter calls for us to have our name a legal organ anyway. So our name legal organ, right now will be inconsistent with what the charter calls for. We had to name our
Oh,
own.
no, so that's not the problem, like changing Fulton County to South Fulton, we'd actually want them to do that.
Right.
It is South Fulton, but what I mean is stating what type notice to who you have to give it to, the time to give that notice, all of that is
No.
governed by state law.
Oh,
I
I see.
What
understand
they are
that.
doing is they are creating a mini sunshine law specifically for South Fulton. I haven't seen that in other jurisdictions. Usually you don't have duplicate sunshine laws. The clerk does what state law says they need to do, and then they met all their state's requirements. But they are, by this section, creating a sunshine law specific to South Fulton.
Well, their attorney did it at the State House, so I'm sure it shouldn't be conflicting, but I think it's worth raising to make sure we wanted to be consistent with.
I mean,
Yeah, like why
that's a
would
good
the
point.
city need two sunshine laws? Like why would they need to adhere to what the rest of the state does and then something specific to the city? To me, that wouldn't make practical sense, but I just wanted to let you know that is what this accomplishment.
All right, Ms. Ross, do you have any other?
Not in that
Okay,
sense.
Ms. Willis, go ahead.
Under section road delineation, section 3.10A, it says, 120,
What
starting
line
at
number?
line number 124. I'm sorry. It's starting at line 127. The city manager should have the authority to provide all levels he or she deems necessary and appropriate administrative support staff for the mayor and council members, or any such administrative support staff should be subject to the authority and direction of the city manager and not the mayor and council
The
member.
tone of it.
It seems like to me, it's ambiguity relative to our staff. Like you have two staff persons, each of us have a staff person. Is that saying the city manager is gonna have direction and control over those individuals? Because if that's the case, I'm not in agreement with that. I'm in agreement with people that he manages on a day-to-day basis, operation-wise, over the department heads, but people that are tied directly to our offices, I'm not in agreement with him having direction and control over those individuals.
I agree.
I agree with that too. Go ahead,
I agree.
But does it say that?
That's what, it appears that
Mr. Khalid has the floor.
It does.
So,
127.
I spoke with Representative Bazemore this weekend, who wrote this bill. I actually do agree with everything that Councilman Willis said. We do agree from time to time. And however,
Amen.
Representative Bazemore made the argument that they are not in control of their clerks and staff in the legislature, and that she is probably, I'm just putting this out, FYI, they probably are not going to accept that change. This is, and not to harp on it, but this is one of those cases where that Article 1 about retroactive laws is important. If they don't accept the change, if they don't accept the change and this bill goes forward, I still think that our current council aide should be protected. And I would like for our city attorney to like maybe opine about how we make sure that their jobs will remain safe, or it may just be a conversation that we have with our city manager, that their jobs are not going to change just because a piece of legislation passes. And I want that for our employees.
So I will tell you this, the retroactivity of the application of employment is highly, hotly, widely, every adjective you can think of within those parameters contested in Georgia. There is an extensive amount of litigation on it. So because you are making so many personnel changes to people who already have vested rights and vested positions, those are gonna be some of the considerations that you have, because you don't wanna make an abrupt change and an unintended consequence comes about to where you are now having an operation that doesn't fit the vested rights of this person, and you can't just violate someone's constitutional rights. And when I say violate constitutional rights, what I mean is there's a constitutional provision in the state of Georgia that says that legislation cannot be passed to retroactively interfere with someone's substantive vested constitutional rights. So for example, that would mean like the city clerk's position. If the city clerk has been selected by a certain process and you change that process, you would then not be able to say, because that process changed, you're no longer eligible to sit in your seat. So she would have a vested protected right to certain things that may be inconsistent with this legislation, to where that if you didn't acknowledge that, you would potentially have constitutional challenges.
So I just want to make that clear for the record, but I agree with Councilwoman Willis and everyone down there. We should strike this.
Really?
Yeah.
Is there consensus on that?
Yes.
Okay, move on.
So is that lines 124 through, is 130?
Yeah.
130.
Yes, and it goes to, 130.
Everybody say yes, I'm assuming that's
Number 3 on the
unanimous.
section. Yes, unanimous.
Can I make one
Section
more?
number 3.
Yes, section, 3.10, 3.10A.
Yeah, 10A, section 3.
Road delineation. I would like to make one more point. And so, some things, even though, I agree that there may be some things, I think it's a lot of things they're likely not to change upon this request. However, in speaking with, a lobbyist from, GMA, what was said to me is that what we may want to do when this is said and over with, if some things get through that we just can't agree with and that will not change, we will probably need to get with a person from a litigator from GMA, not to litigate on our behalf, but that can tell us what provisions in this charter as city council we have the ability to change under home rules, and then which ones we just have to live with.
Okay, does anybody else, Mr. Khalid, or any of you all have any other suggestions
Yes.
on this bill?
Yes.
Yeah, I do.
Can I follow up to what Councilman Willis just said, just to give you a little bit of legal component to that? I think that's one of the, regardless of how anyone feels about the legislation, one of the benefits of your charter commission is because it insulates you from precisely what she just said. And that's, you don't have to battle back and forth, because the state legislature, the local delegation, if they get support of the Senate, they can push this through. It's within their authority. But you also have authority under home rule powers to then go back and make other changes. And then they have the authority to make changes that they want to counter that. And it doesn't benefit anyone when you have two local intergovernmental jurisdictions who are using their constitutional authorities back and forth to create a certain dynamic. Your charter commission, which is what was implemented by your charter, spoke to that, because it says that when we're going to make charter changes, we're going to bring together the local delegation, we're going to bring together the city council, we're going to bring representatives from each of the senators, put everyone at the table and try to create a document that is as close to a consensus as possible for all these entities who represent this jurisdiction. I think the problems, the challenges that you're having now is that that process is not being facilitated. You have, we're one group.
So she missed the historical perspective of this, because you were late. But,
Point of order.
I still have the floor. And I'm just
Stay on
gonna-
task, Mayor.
But she just gave information that's not, I understand what you're saying. In 5 years, you're right. We are supposed to put that commission in place. But what I'll explain is that when this bill was introduced in 2013, what it looked like on the House side, it changed once it reached the Senate, and what was understood, and you can ask every legislator that was involved, that there were going to have to be changes made once this bill came out of the General Assembly, because the senator that carried it, which was John Abbott, changed the bill. And what was said is that, look, we're not going to go back and forth about this now, because we need to get this bill out of the General Assembly. But it was understood that we would have to go back and make changes. That's why it's a lot of ambiguity in this charter, because it was understood that we would have to go back and make changes, and it was going to be before that commission was put into place 5 years from now.
Okay, let me remind you, everybody, we at 3:53.
Right, yeah.
This room has to be relinquished
No,
within another hour at least. So let's stay on topic, and would you, where do we leave off with?
I'm on 3 point.
The last section was,
Ms. Gilliard.
page 5.
3.10.
What line?
Line 130. 166.
166. Go ahead, Ms. Gilliard.
Wait a minute.
You just did that.
Section. Oh, I'm sorry. 1, 2, 30, 198.
198.
198. 200, I'm sorry.
Well,
The
we
mayor,
had
the
200.
mayor, 200. See, some of mine is missing.
Go right.
The mayor was in 10 business days after receiving da. But the important part is the mayor has the right to veto any ordinance, resolution, or other action adopted by the city council in accordance with the procedures set forth below. That is different than how it is now. So I don't see why that needs to change. It should stay as it is right now.
Well, I'm gonna speak to that. If you look at, if anybody who reads this, here's a letter from an attorney firm, Hall, Booth, Smith Incorporated. And I asked them to look at that particular issue. They came back and with citations of authority, the mayor shall have the right to veto any ordinance adopted by the city council in order with the procedures set forth in this section. Where we have the battle is, we go back and forth as to what the interpretation is. I was in the room, I was on the phone with a member of legislative council. He said that that section of this charter is poorly written. And he said that what it does, because how you read it, it gives the mayor the right to veto anything. That's why we had the issue with the last veto that we did. I still hold that the veto was legal and fair, and that's why I brought it to its fruition at the next regular meeting of our council. So it depends on who's looking at it. I had attorneys, more than one attorney, to look at it, and they've come back with the same deal, and so did legislative council. Mr. Khalid, then Mr.
So, we're having difficult conversations. We held a special call meeting, and our attorney, who is still our attorney, ruled that the veto wasn't valid because ordinance is ordinance. And in legal writing, when you don't enumerate, it is only what is on the page. So ordinance does not include contract. It does not include resolution. It does not include an act of council.
Right.
Now, personally, whatever we decide as a group, I am willing to abide with. I'm okay if the mayor gets to veto everything. I'm okay if the mayor just vetoes the ordinance. What I'm not okay with is it being unclear and then us fighting about what's unclear. So I think that we are going to make a recommendation to either keep it limited to ordinances and line items of appropriation, or we're going to take a vote to expand it to everything. And I think whatever we vote on as a body, we should abide by as a body.
Okay, that's Rob.
Councilmember Dixon.
Oh. Did he have some or?
No, it's you, that's Rob.
Oh, okay, so, before we had any of this, I actually, with some of my early vetoes, I actually asked the author, which I asked Roger Bruce, what was the intent? Because the writing is poor. And so, one section, it says he has it, then one paragraph says he doesn't, and the third one says he does. And he said it was his intent that the mayor could veto any of them. And so that's what I think makes sense. I also think that we haven't seen this abused. In 3 years, 5 vetoes. He has a constituent that's citywide and broader than any of us, and so I actually support the clarification as well.
Okay, Mr. Baker.
I thought that this was unique if it was interpreted properly by our city attorney the first time I heard it interpreted. Only because an ordinance carries more weight, seemingly. We allow 2 reads so that thorough research is done and everything that we're going to undertake as a law is digested properly. However, when a resolution is written, I thought the intention, especially given that it's more grassroots from our council, as something that we resolve and we vote into law. And I felt that it shouldn't have a discretion in a weak mayor form of government to be rejected or vetoed if a quorum of council agrees to it. And that's how I feel in reference to a veto of a resolution. I believe that this body should be allowed to vote and agree upon as a quorum for something to be a resolve.
Ms. Willis?
So the difference between a resolution and an ordinance, it has nothing to do with which stronger than the other. The resolution is a call to action. For example, we voted on a resolution today. A resolution is asking someone to do something. It does not have to be codified into law. We can't make our ask law. Ordinances require us to codify, and it's a law. So we can't require our police officers to go give somebody a citation for a resolution because it's not law. But an ordinance, we can have our officers can write somebody a citation because it's a law. And so what I would like to say is I do agree with Councilmember Rao. The mayor veto power it has a lot of ambiguity, and also how to override a veto has ambiguity. I understand what our attorney opined on. She may have opined that the mayor's veto was invalid, but according to this charter, in order to get rid of a veto that you don't agree with is to override it by a vote of supermajority of this council, and that was never done. So any veto that he put forth could be challenged in court, that it sustains, because none of us overrid any of his vetoes that was put forth. It doesn't matter whether or not she ruled that it was invalid. And so it does need to be cleared up, and our mayor has not abused his powers, regardless of what people are saying. He's only had 5 vetoes, and I agree, he should have vetoed more than that within 3 years.
Okay, Derek, you want to make a statement?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
So, have we identified what or the other actions are? I think that's the part that is confusing. And he has the right to veto any ordinance, resolution, or other actions. So we're saying that includes
Anything.
So that is gonna.
But we could just take that out. Let's just take it out. Because let's say ordinance, resolution, and budget, and then take that other action out.
No, budget, no.
No, because somebody bring a contract and say we'll vote on that, and then he can't veto that.
Well, what's gonna happen is that if this passes, that term other action is
Anything.
extremely ambiguous, because it says here that other action is something that's presented for signature. So obviously other action is not everything, because everything's not presented for signature. But leaving that ambiguity is going to, in my opinion, create a level of confusion and discord when you guys are not unanimous with certain things in the team.
And the way it is now is always creating an ambiguity. That's what I'm saying.
Well, I will tell you what I think is creating the ambiguity. What I think is creating the ambiguity is because you guys are trying to conform intent with what's expressly written. So if his intent was for it to be everything, and what's expressly written is not everything, then of course it's confusing. Right. Because you're trying to match something that he is saying is inside of me personally with what's on the paper.
Which is why they fixing it, so I'm just.
Do you agree that when that happens, that you go to the intent of the writer?
Not when the language, it is a fundamental principle of almost every interpretation within the legal realm, that when the language is clear, you do not go to intent, and you only go to intent when it's ambiguous. And
I agree with you that is a point of argument between attorneys, and I think that argument will pursue. So I'm just saying, I look at it as if the state legislature wrote this deal, all right, and all we're saying is we just need to clarify what you really mean. Who do we go to? Do we go back to the state?
If it is his intent
Not his, I'm talking
If
about.
it is, well, if it's Roger Bruce's, if it's everybody in the state legislature, no matter who it is,
Yeah.
I'm gonna say if it is, I'm gonna call them they're his. If it is their intent for veto authority to be over everything, it is unfair for them to write something to where it's not over everything. So if it is in fact their intent for it to be over everything, then they do need to change this so that the written portion matches whatever is in there, whatever they're thinking about.
Okay.
And right now, it just doesn't do that.
All right, Ms.
And you
Gunn?
don't think this is, so let me be clear. Do you think it's satisfied when we say or other action?
No, I think, I definitely think that other action is going to cause a lot of discord amongst the council in the future.
Right, so I'm saying, we're giving feedback, so I'm saying I'm willing to strike other action.
Now, if you strike other action, you either need to do two things of other action. You need to specifically enumerate what other action is, so you guys aren't confused in the future, or you need to get rid of it.
Oh,
The
you
other
talking
action
about,
needs to come out.
Ms. Gums has the floor.
But other action, you're saying.
Other action is very confusing.
Well, I definitely want to strike that. I do have a question though, before we go on. It is 4 o'clock, right? And are we gonna get through all 6 of these bills?
The other
Now,
one's
listen.
short.
Can you please, I have a question about this.
Ms. Gums, go continue.
So my question is, are we able to, I'm just trying to figure out how we are going to maneuver through the next couple of bills.
I have a suggestion.
Excuse me, she has the floor.
Would you leave?
I got you.
I asked you first. I yield to you.
So I'll yield to Councilwoman Willis, who will then yield to Councilwoman Gilliard.
No,
Why?
no.
Oh, then she's gonna yield back.
Okay. I think that other actions should be contracts and budgets, because, what happened, and this is a real, life situation, a contract was dropped on this council in a special call meeting, and, it was not attached to a resolution or ordinance. And, the quorum of council, tried to vote on that contract. So I think the other actions should be specific, and it should be budget and contracts.
Okay. Can I yield to Councilwoman Gilliard?
No, you can't. I will acknowledge Councilwoman Gilliard.
Oh,
You can only yield one time.
oh, my bad.
I
thought
have
it
a
was twice.
I have a suggestion.
Ms. Gilliard, you coming up now?
I have a, you said I could speak, didn't you?
Now you can speak. Go.
Let me get my mind back together. I have a suggestion, and that suggestion is, it is 4 o'clock. So I think it would be a good idea if all of us wrote down on each one of these bills, whatever it is, whatever changes we want to make, and submit them to the clerk.
No.
So the clerk can compile them, and then we have another meeting quickly. Because we will never finish this. This one is too thick.
Let me do, I got you. Let me do this. Ms. Gums,
Yes, we were
I
supposed
thought
to
you
do
were
that.
supposed to,
Right.
we were supposed to do that, I'm not saying that, but you were on this particular legislation. You said that you identify what other actions are, right?
Yes,
What
we
were-
have all,
what were-
there's a whole lot of them.
Okay. Other actions were what?
We have a lot, oh, what are you talking about on this
On
particular
this particular
line?
one.
Yes, taking
Yes.
out other actions.
And I suggest to add in budgets and
That's
contracts.
the one, but
Budget and contracts is already in there.
No, Mr. Mayor, I'm addressing the chair. What the attorney applied is that other actions, we need to be specific on what other means. And what I'm saying is leave everything else in there, and then also add budget and contracts.
well, Ms. Gums? Ms. Gums,
Yes, sir.
you agree with her?
No.
Okay. Ms. Reed and then Ms. Stone.
Madam Attorney, would it read, could it offer clarity when it says veto ordinance, resolution, or other certain action such as, and then list what those are?
I think such as is still ambiguous because it doesn't definitively tell the mayor what his authority is, and it doesn't tell the council what their authority
No, I'm
is.
saying such as, and list the specific other actions.
Instead of using, because such as is still
Just drop
broad.
such as in.
Yeah,
Other certain
which
action.
will constitute, or like every ordinance, resolution, and enumerate the other action.
Mm-hmm.
And here's another thing, if you include contracts, I would include a process to shorten the response period, or else it's gonna potentially delay the implementation of your contracts until the next
You
council
said
meeting.
process
To shorten the veto period, because the contract, let's just say there was a contested contract, it got approved.
Yeah.
Right now, that contract still can go through the process, you can tell the vendor, look, you're good to go, it's signed off on it. If
Right.
you include contracts here, that means that if it's contested, you will not, or you as an administration, I'm sorry?
5 days. So
It's
he
5
would
days.
have 5 days to veto, so it wouldn't matter if he doesn't veto within 5 days.
Shouldn't be
He
It's
can
law.
sign it,
It's
and
law.
then
It's
if
10
he,
now.
and then if he
10
does,
now.
Well, it's actually it's 10 days to veto, and if he vetoes, it's the next regular meeting before it's heard.
correct, but if 10 days passes, then he would not have the ability to veto, and we would still execute
Right.
regardless. And so it wouldn't,
Well,
those
it would
two,
depend, so if he vetoes it, then you would have to wait until the next regular meeting to implement that contract.
That's true.
Whereas if you
Correct.
shorten the process, it'll give the council, at least if it's something that, well, I don't know, administratively, is it gonna be a problem administratively to have that? If it's not a problem
If there's a
administratively,
veto,
to
you
wait
gotta
until
go to
the
the
next
next
council meeting, then there's really
If
no
you
risk.
veto, you gotta go to the next council meeting anyway.
right.
Well,
Well,
decide
that's what
what
I'm
10
saying, so
days.
you could, if there is a process to where you could determine whether it's going to be valid or not before that next council meeting, if it doesn't matter that you wait until the next council meeting for implementation of the contract, then it's moot.
That's exactly.
I don't understand why contracts has to be included in all.
All right, we need to get a consensus
Wait.
on this.
Well, I was after Mr. Reeves.
Okay. Were you? No, yeah, you were. Go ahead.
I think that we have to just be clear that we're moving forward and we're not relitigating things that happened in the past. Right? So we did approve a contract on December 16th. There was a vote on camera. We approved that contract. That person has a vested employment interest under Article 1. So that doesn't, adding contracts in today is not going to change what has already transpired. And the interests that have already vested.
Well, if you're referring to my contract, I've not signed it yet. I did give it to the city manager I gave it to the city manager for execution. However, it hasn't been brought back to me for signature. And then I also told Councilwoman Gums, when it was brought up at the meeting, she made a motion to also have, another attorney brought in to amend the contract or to see if there was any need to amend it. So I did,
So those facts are all fine and
Separate
good.
from the.
Yeah, they are all fine and
So
good.
why are we talking
But
about your
the
contract?
public record,
Right.
right. Those facts are all fine and good, but the public record is that the council approved the contract. Right, so the public record is what it is. I think what would be helpful, and so first I want to say about time, I have a hearing at 6 o'clock. I'm going to be on trial, and I'm okay with staying until 5:45 to continue this conversation. So if I'm okay with staying till 5:45, I think everybody else should be okay with staying till 5:45.
I'm just saying,
We're
not can't do that, I'm just saying, be cognizant.
Right, I'm just saying, we're in conversation.
We don't wanna miss your trial.
I have the floor. We're in conversation. We're in conversation. It won't be because I'm not gonna obstruct everything, but I have the floor, and I'm just saying that I'm willing to stay till 5:45.
Okay.
I think that in that time, we're almost through with 1019. I think we can get through 1019 and probably 921. And then we probably need to make a plan for the rest of them. I will say that you're saying 6, I only know about 5. Representative Bazemore says that she is going to pull 965, which is the committee agreed, and 1028, which is a duplicate of 965.
Right.
So we really only have like 1 or 2 more.
Well, there is one bill that's about salaries.
Right.
Okay, so I haven't seen that. yet. Okay.
Me neither.
However, So I would suggest this as a work plan that we try and get through 1019 and 921. And what I will say is about, we're going to get to 921 and hopefully, but I think that some of what we're wrestling with is, what I hear even in this conversation all day today, is what happens if members of council disagree with our city attorney. And I think what we need to make clear in our charter and as a process and as a standard operating procedure is that whatever our city attorney opines is the ruling. And that if anyone wants to, whoever that city attorney is, might not always be Fincher Denmark 921 passes, but whatever that city attorney opines should be the ruling for the city. And then if anyone wants to appeal that ruling beyond that, the charter makes clear that they can appeal that in Fulton Superior Court. So barring an appeal in Fulton Superior Court, once the city attorney has opined on something, we just need to accept that opinion. Because I think that's where we go round and round in circles. And with that, I'm going to yield to Councilman.
Okay, so going back to this, because I like clarity, right? So back to the ordinance, resolution, or other action, or I said other certain action, or such as, what if we drop the such as and just, and go with namely, ordinance, resolution, or other action, namely?
I think namely, if you're going to give a power, I think it needs to definitively state what the power is. Because if it's ambiguous, if there's ambiguity as to that power, it's going to create discord between the person who is attempting to exercise it and the people who feel that their rights are being infringed by that exercise. And that will create discord in the future, likely.
Right, because see, and that's the whole reason of it. We want to just take out the gray area and make it a black and white document. So whatever makes it specific, it makes it clear, and that's what we can go with.
Okay. Ms. Gumbs, you made the motion when you, Ms. Gumbs.
So,
Go ahead.
that's all I have for right now. Other
Can you
than
restate what you want?
about the other actions need to be removed. Yeah, I know other council people want to put other stuff in, so.
Okay, so do I have a consensus as Ms. Gumbs stated?
Yes.
Just remove other actions, I think, right?
Yeah.
We just remove other actions.
Are we voting?
All right, that passes.
Consensus.
Hold your hands.
Throw your hands up.
If it can't be clear.
It's 5.
Right. Go ahead.
I want to say, I want to clarify, or for 198, instead, in lieu of that, put contracts.
Why?
198.
Because I do think that was, if it's, yeah.
What's the contract?
If you, regardless, we voted up or down, I'm very, I think it's clear.
All right. Do we have let's vote. Do we have a consensus?
Okay, that's fine. Move on. Okay.
All right, go ahead.
They're gonna do what they want to do anyway.
I have two.
Exactly, that's what I said, move on. So the next one I had, I think we talked about this line 234 and 234 and 235. I'm saying that these are not these the city manager's responsibilities versus the mayor.
I agree that we're city manager.
So we said we would take out. So how do y'all want to address it?
Read
Or
it.
just leave it like that?
Can you read it, please?
It says the mayor shall be the part-time chief executive of the city government and a member of and the presiding officer of the city council responsible for the efficient and orderly administration of the city affairs. That's the part. The mayor shall be responsible for the enforcement of laws, rules, regulations, ordinances, and franchises in the city. The mayor may conduct inquiries, investigations without investigation into the conduct of the city affairs and shall have power and duties as specified in this charter or as may be provided by ordinance consistent with this charter. I don't think that should be the mayor. It should say this, these are city manager functions.
I agree with that.
With the exception of the
I
part
agree.
about preside, that first part is used.
I don't know why franchises.
Okay, let me get Ms. Willis and Ms. Gilliard.
I agree, but that doesn't strip the mayor's power from, currently in the charter, he has the authority to launch investigation as mayor of the city. That does not, are we sure we're not striking that power from him?
I'm not looking at next to it, I mean, y'all have to look, I'm just looking at this section, so.
I agree, but I think that, and then we can move on. I agree with what you said. Most of that you read should be duties under the city manager, but I do think that the mayor and city manager should have the ability to initiate investigations when necessary.
What about the council?
So will you restate what you're looking for consensus on?
Because if that's addressing the mayor's roles and responsibility,
We would really need to look at the original, because this only takes that section, so I don't know if we're taking it out or not.
and so we are running, it is 4:20, and I would say that we should, whatever we don't cover, send our suggestions to the clerk and CC the mayor, this Cleo.
Okay, let's do this one and then, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
Thought y'all were riding out with committee.
I think we gonna get through these
Just a
other
few
quick.
other-
They only
No, this is too
3-page
thick.
bills.
We're not, because they
Well,
got.
we still, you keep conversating like this, we won't.
We're not
So
gonna get
you have something on the floor, Dr. Rao? Let's get a consensus if you would kind of reiterate what you said.
I just wanna point out, these are the duties, with the exception of the, presiding over city council. That first part is the mayor's, but the rest really is the city manager.
Okay.
And unfortunately, I don't, can't tell if you,
So you're saying to move all of that to the city manager's section of the charter?
Yeah, because the management of the franchise, all that, that's the city manager.
Really, franchise.
That portion, Mr. Cooley. Okay, go ahead, Ms. Gilliard.
Yeah, maybe that's the way to do it.
So
Take out and responsible for the efficient orderly, and that next sentence, because that is the city manager's role.
Right.
So like line 234 through 236. Is the city manager's responsibility.
The mayor shall be responsible.
You got that, Madam Clerk? Ms. Gilliard, go ahead.
That's what I was gonna say, because I didn't understand why the mayor would be over franchise.
Right.
Right. Okay, did we get a consensus?
Yeah.
1, 2,
Oh.
3, 4.
Did we add the investigatory part to it?
It's in there, it stayed, I just took out the lines that were
That
pertaining
stayed.
to
She
the
just
city
removed
manager.
the part that says the mayor shall be responsible for the enforcement of laws, rules, regulations, ordinances, and franchises in the city.
Right.
That's
Okay,
Okay,
correct.
let's vote.
That's the
That
consensus.
passes.
But the next sentence, I have a question.
Go ahead, Ms. Gilliard.
So what happens if the council decides that they want to conduct an inquiry, an investigation? Is this just limited to the city manager?
Yeah, it's still in the charter.
Yeah, we had that already.
It's in the chart already.
Well, it could change.
So long as you get.
It hasn't changed. They haven't said anything about changing it. They haven't
I'm
made a
not-
suggestion to change it.
Do I have the floor, Mayor?
Sure do.
Okay, so since I have the floor,
Yes.
so
Go ahead.
I'm questioning whether or not the city manager is the only position that can conduct an inquiry or investigation into the conduct of the city affairs.
No. We still
So-
can initiate those same hearings that we did, which is part
Right,
of
so
it.
it says the mayor, and they say change it to city manager, may conduct inquiries and investigations into the conduct of the city's affairs. Da 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 da. So my question is, city manager, the only one that can do that? Or can it be the city
It says-
manager, the mayor, the city council, da da da?
It says in the existing document that it's the mayor, all right?
Okay,
You have done it.
right.
You have, by vote.
So you can do it by
Yes.
vote.
Yeah, by
Yes,
4
as long as
votes,
you got
you
four
can do it.
votes.
But
Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah. I think the question she's asking is, it takes a collective of 4 of us. Can the mayor do it independently without having the 4
That's
of
what
us?
that's what the existing charter
And it's
says
always
right
been
now.
like
And
that.
it's always
Yes.
been that way.
That's what your question is.
Yes.
Yeah, but and the answer is this existing right now. That's what happens. But you can do it by 4 votes.
So it's just like a special call meeting.
Mm-hmm. That's correct, Mr. Green. Okay, so can we get a consensus? Do we have the language down the way?
No, you did.
Oh, we did, okay.
So
Just a few more.
245 to 247.
Delete.
Okay.
You gonna make a motion to,
Consensus?
consensus to delete.
Delete that.
Can we vote, y'all? We can
Get a
vote.
Yeah.
consensus vote?
Yeah.
Okay, that passes. Ms. Baker, you raised your hand? That passes
That's a consensus.
that's consensus, all right.
So I'm sorry, I've been recognized by the chair.
Go ahead.
On section 248, that should also include city clerk. We just have city manager, city attorney, and chief municipal judge.
What section?
The next line.
Section 8, 248.
Page 8. And then what now?
That's the consistent, that we said we would leave it the way it is.
Yes.
Oh, I did find my other thing, so.
You took a
We did
consensus on that?
Y'all
Can we-
with us?
all right, Do
I don't
you
think
understand?
I don't think anything earlier they took that a consensus on,
No,
so I
we
think
didn't
you would
take that.
need to take a consensus
Yeah.
now.
So,
Okay. That's what I was, that's what I figured.
are y'all paying attention down there? Y'all here?
What lines are you talking about?
248.
248,
I thought we just removed 245 through
247.
And
246.
248 currently doesn't have a city clerk, so we're saying, shouldn't that be in there?
Add the city clerk.
As a, whose powers are these? Of the mayor?
It's the nominations, just nominations.
City manager, city
City-
attorney,
all the
chief
ones-
judge, city clerk.
Sure, that's already in?
Sure. Well, no, because this gave that power to the city manager. That's why it's missing from here. So you want to keep it with the mayor.
That's what we said.
Yeah, I'm cool with that.
Okay, consensus? That passes, consensus.
All right, so section 3.29, selection of mayor pro tem,
What line?
line 297 through 306. I actually think, that should, which section, no council member shall serve 2 or more successive years as mayor pro tem. Think we should strike that, because if they're doing a good job from their peers, of course, they're voted on from their peers, I think
Right.
that's fine.
So it's like that's for consensus.
Can I ask for consensus, everybody?
And
To
what you
remove
want?
that sentence,
Delete to
Delete it.
that sentence.
Discussion.
yeah.
Yes.
Have a discussion.
Go ahead, Mr. Reed, and then Mr. Khalid.
No,
Yeah,
repeat what he said.
I actually think it should stay in there. I think that part of what we need to be doing as a city is cultivating leadership and cultivating new leaders. So if we rotate that around, and actually in some cities, Duluth comes to mind because I know people in council in Duluth, they just automatically rotate it every year so that somebody gets it. I think at the end of our terms, I think any of us should be ready to step into that role. And I think it maybe depoliticizes the role if there's a rotation, or if at least they aren't consecutive years. So actually, I'm fine with it the way it is. And if I thought I had consensus, I would actually strike the elections altogether and go to a rotating schedule, which I think is just
Okay.
better for
I
us.
would agree with that.
I know y'all gonna laugh, but I actually agree with Khalid.
I've been married so long.
No, that ain't bad. But I do think that, and he is correct, that in, most cities, the pro tem, I'll wait until they get finished. In most cities, the pro tem role is a rotating role, it's not a political role. As a matter of fact, Councilmember Reeves and I had a discussion when he first got elected, about this pro tem role. And what we discussed is that the role should be rotated based on, the order of districts. And in some cases, it may be a person's election year and they end up being pro tem. If that's the way it falls, that's just the way it falls. But it should be a rotating role, and it should not be politicized. And everyone should understand that the road is not, it's not activated unless the mayor is absent, disabled, or incapacitated. It's ceremonial. It's just a title, but it needs to be rotated. It does not need to be earned.
So
It needs to be rotated.
what is the language for consensus then?
Well, she made her already, so I think it's just.
I think we should rotate it.
Actually, Ms. Miller,
Yes, go ahead.
I don't think that that's even up for question in here. We were just talking about striking it,
Really?
so that somebody couldn't do it, it won't be limited to 1 year term. So the idea of having it rotated is not even in here.
If we strike that, Madam Attorney, we can always go back as the council and decide how we
Yeah,
want
that's
to do
not a
it.
form of government. You can, if you strike it and it's passed, you can always change it by charter amendment.
And for the record, I just want to say this as well, since I had the floor, that rotating it may be scary.
Yeah.
It may be. Because God forbid something really happens, if you don't have the trust of your colleagues to be in that position, now you are actually in that position over 100,000 people, and that may not be.
I agree.
I agree.
with you.
Okay, so what is the language of the recommendation? Let's go.
Strike the language.
Strike it.
Okay, the language strike. Do I have a consensus?
And the sentence we're striking is no council member shall serve 2 or more consecutive terms?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. That passes.
I think, and we came to a consensus on section 13 about the police chief and fire chief, so you have that. The city,
Let's do the vote, just.
We got to vote already.
we got to vote
Yeah, we
already?
did vote
Okay.
previously.
Did we do section 4.13 for city clerk?
No.
No.
All right.
You
said
should.
delete.
That
I
was
don't think
before.
I
that's-
said we should strike that.
I do too.
Who should not be a council member?
And it should not be a council
Who should
member.
not be a council
Yeah.
member?
Who should not be,
I
and
thought
that,
they were deleting the whole thing.
I thought we would delete the whole
The whole
section.
The whole section?
Yeah.
Okay.
well, can you do a whole session, because it is a clerk session in the original charter?
Is it?
I think
Yeah,
so.
it
is.
It
It's
is.
just
I just think it says the mayor shall
Yeah.
appoint a city clerk, and we strike who shall not be a councilman.
Right.
Right.
So change city manager to mayor
mayor.
To mayor.
and take out
Who should not be a
who shall not be a council member.
Right.
Okay, that is the language. Can I get a consensus? Let's move on. That passes.
Another part for section 6.31, line 348 to 350, that's the one where the city manager shall report at each regular meeting. City council, such expenditures for any made by the mayor or individual council members since the last regular meeting. I think we should strike 348 to 350.
I second that.
Yeah.
What is it? Can you repeat that again?
I'm sorry, because it's in the report, you're doing it in your financials anyway.
It's talking about individual.
Oh, yeah, what we talking about, okay.
Okay, we have recommended language. Let's give me a consensus. That has a consensus.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Ms.
It's
Carrier.
real, it's a real quick one. So as we go through these and the procedure changes for hiring folks, for instance, the finance director and the city attorney, if the legislators are successful in getting this done, does that mean that they are immediately terminated?
No, that's the ex post facto thing we've been talking about.
Okay? All right, come on, let's go. Ms. Rob.
So the next part is the most substantial part, and I'll just speak to it in general. I don't like the ethics panel as it's presented. I think our ethics board has been working from what I could see. It seems as if they've thrown out things that were frivolous. And I think they're setting the standard that before you bring an allegation, you need to provide documentation and evidence. I'm concerned about the rotating and having consistency in how they deliberate and handle these cases, especially if they can escalate or go to Superior Court or some other. I think having a trained ethics board, I think, you know, it's parts of it I like in terms of being clear about what could be considered an ethical violation, because I do think the way our current ethics ordinance is written, it really only deals with financial interests, not other things. And so I think we should keep our board in place, but maybe look at some of these grounds. Some of them, I think the words kind of scare me, and I'd love for the attorney to, I want to make sure they're real legal terms and not just something that people could subjectively say, oh, that fits, if you know what I mean.
There are substantial, I reviewed the ethics process, I've not seen it similarly in any other charter. I'm not saying that I've looked at every charter in the state of Georgia. It's not typical. I don't know why it was put there, but I do know the language of it is very broad, and it can create a level of discord when you have a council. If you have a council where there is discord between the council, it gives a lot of leeway to increase and enhance that discord, and I don't think it's in your best interest to have it.
Okay, Mr. Khalid?
So I actually disagree. I do worry that our ethics board has been politicized. We're going forth with our first hearing ever tonight on a complaint that was incomplete. And the 8 previous incomplete complaints were thrown out. But then we get to this 9th complaint, and somehow, though it fails to meet the test that the other 8 also failed to meet, we're going forward. So I do think that our ethics board has been politicized and compromised. I actually do like, what they propose. Namely, they propose that everyone on the ethics board has to be an attorney.
I do like that.
And so like, I love that.
I don't like that.
I would strike, and so I'm just gonna say my 3 recommendations, what they're for. One is, going back to line 74, that people can be removed for conduct unbecoming. I don't know if there's a legal,
Well, that's what I mean, is to create discord because
right, so
if there's a disagreement and the other person's gonna allege that they're engaging in conduct which is
so
unbecoming.
my first ask is, could we remove conduct unbecoming as a removal thing?
I support that.
She supports it.
74.
She supports that.
Do we as a body?
Right, do we have a consensus for that?
I think that's.
Let me see if we got a consensus. Yes, we do.
Okay. The next line that I would like to strike is no less than 3 years in civil litigation. I think that ethics cases can, there's already a recommendation that they have 5 years experience. I think we need a pool with a diverse set of experience, civil litigation, criminal, municipal, whatever it is. And so I don't think that we need that less than 3 years in civil litigation. That is line 461.
Thank you.
So not the whole line. We're keeping the 5 years, but just striking the no less than 3 in civil litigation.
Okay.
Which part?
She has, give them the line again, Mr. Khalid.
461?
Okay.
Right.
You heard the
support that.
recommended language. Is there consensus?
No.
So you voted no.
Talking about general civil litigation.
No. Oh, well, can I, do I have a
Yeah, we'll get it to you.
So what is also saying in the ethics board is that you're only seeing all attorneys as being ethical.
I want to strike that.
Hey.
So I don't think that that's what they're saying. I think what you're
All,
saying is,
are
That's
you,
what it
you all
says.
want all attorneys in good standing with the Georgia State Bar, and I think we have maybe a few constituents that also serve on the ethics board. I think the ethics board has been working, personally. And you may never know that tonight you may fare well and everything will be good. But what I'm just saying is that we are making the assumption that all attorneys are ethical.
Can I just?
Go ahead, Mr. Khalid.
Yeah, I don't think that the assumption is that all attorneys are ethical. I think the assumption is that our ethics board should all have experience in the law. We don't want to, our ethics board I could be lucky, or our ethics board could render a decision that is not compatible with Georgia state law or employment law or our charter, and then there's an additional fight that has to happen in court, there's an additional expense, like those things could happen. So I think whether it's all, I mean, and I would compromise, so maybe it's not all of them, but maybe, because I think it's a panel of 3, they rotate and they pick 3 for a panel, at least one person on each panel should be an attorney. So yeah, I'm willing to compromise.
Well, I mean,
Okay.
I can yield that.
Please, Ralph.
So I think that is a good mix. I don't like the 3 thing either, but I'm just saying, I think it adds also a different perspective, because when you get a whole bunch of lawyers in a room, they're only gonna go for one thing. So I think the constituent piece of it also kind of level sets a little bit. It kind of adds a little bit more
We do have constituents that are.
Okay, she's still at the floor.
Yeah, we do, but I'm just saying, a whole room full of attorneys, I think the constituents also kind of help level set in those situations. So that's just my own personal opinion.
I agree. Okay, Ms. Ralph?
I think what was said about the attorneys and keeping us out of further action, I think they've done a great job. And I think some things that I've seen, and I've been looking for afar, I've never attended it, but I've been watching. I think they have been fair in their deliberations. And I do think we have to think about people looking with the eye to protect the city. So I agree with Councilman Khalid on the attorneys. I just think if we use the parameters in the first part where we talk about the charges or the violations and let it run through our current ethics board, that's what I feel comfortable with. All this other stuff, I don't know. It could even get, I mean, who's in the pool, who gets picked, that creates its own level of other issues when it's already working. So I don't think that it's not been working. I do think we have to have as many eyes looking out and protecting the city as possible. So I do like the idea of the attorneys being on.
And then,
I just want to go on record, because we have mentioned the ethics hearing that's going to happen tonight on several occasions. And I think we should stop doing that. I think that just like any other hearing, let the process play itself out and let the ethics board do their jobs. And we should not preempt the outcome of any hearing. So I would like to go on record to say, I will ask the mayor that you direct colleagues to refrain from mentioning anything about the ethics case tonight.
Well, I think you did a good job of that.
Okay, the other thing is, I do think that, I may not say that everybody on the ethics board should be an attorney, but I think they should have some legal background, some type of mediation background. If they're not an attorney, have some type of experience with, it could be a paralegal, it could be a mediator, it could be someone who has worked in the legal background. That would be my suggestion.
Ms. Gilliard?
It's a different topic. Is that
No.
Oh, I'm sorry, I yield to Gums, I'm sorry, I yield to Gums.
You hold on to yours.
so,
Ms. Gunn, go ahead.
and that also creates, how this is written, it creates more of an operational burden on our city clerk, because we're asking them to go through a process of also vetting these people who will be on that 3-to-3 rotation. So for me, I'm just thinking, if we keep what we have consistent, like I said, I don't think they've done a bad job, but if y'all wanna add that they need to have some legal background or experience, I get it. But I think that this right here is too much.
Ms. Gilliard, go ahead.
different topic?
No.
You gotta vote
Mr.
on
Baker,
Yes,
same topic.
okay, so, I think that, it's good to have attorneys on the ethics board. But, I think that we're sending the wrong message to our community, that if you're an attorney, that's what gives you the moral and ethical fabric to make judgments on what may happen in our city. I think there are many citizens in our city who have decent moral fabric and the wherewithal to do the jobs that they've been entrusted to do. And the amalgamation of both citizens and attorneys make the balance, because I have been to several of their meetings, and I've seen where the attorneys are black and white, and it's just, you know, the legal aspect is just taken under consideration, whereas many of those individuals who aren't attorneys and don't have that direct legal background, but just like our grandmothers and grandfathers, just know common sense and what's right from wrong. And I think that we need the jail and the mesh of that. So I don't want to get too far in the weeds of touching that. And I think also it won't be retro, given that what we already have is in place, needs to be acknowledged. But I think moving forward, we still should understand that we need everyday citizens a part of that board when it comes to making decisions on.
I think that the board has done great, as it is. I think that it could very well wind up being a bunch of attorneys, because, you know, if one leaves or someone leaves, you have to appoint another. And so my appointee is an attorney, and she seems to be very fine with citizens having input. So I think, yeah.
She's the chair.
And she is
All right.
our district.
Well, let's restate the.
So my recommendation was to scrap the ethics panel and keep our current ethics board is the first one. I think we should break it up.
Okay,
So that's the
let's
first.
get consensus on that.
Wait, I'm sorry, I had a motion about 461, that's what we were in conversation, and so
Right.
now we're jumping to scratch.
There was no vote.
No vote on what?
On line 460, 461, striking with no less than three of
3 years
those.
dedicated to
Right.
general litigation.
Okay.
No, but we can strike that.
Let's get a consensus
Striking it.
on
Yes,
striking it.
striking it.
Let's get a consensus, please. As your
You
consensus.
have it.
And then my second one was about and I understand that we're probably getting ready to vote to like abolish this whole thing, but my second one was about how the list is created and maintained. I'm sorry, I think that many of our boards have not been working, and I think they don't work because each person on the board is an appointee of a member of council. And what I like about this new ethics board is that they would not be appointees per se of council. Each person wouldn't have a person. There would be a pool, they would be randomly selected, so you can't control like who would hear what case. So I like that. And what I think is missing is it doesn't say who makes the selections. And so in lines 454, I would change to say, the city clerk shall maintain a list of not less than 9. Scratch the more than 15. I think the pool can be as large as there are qualified recommendations for. So the city clerk shall maintain a list of not less than 9 submitted by any member of council or resident of South Fulton. I think any resident should be able to appoint someone if they meet the qualifications. We could have a large pool of rotating people, and then you don't have to worry about this thing about people's appointees. I don't know. I think it's an issue.
Okay, let's want to resubmit the recommendation. Can you read it?
No, mine was different than that.
Okay, Ms.
Mine
Clee, what was
I
your
was trying to scrap it
recommendation?
and keep our current ethics commission.
The city to scrap no more than 15 and add submitted by any member of council or resident of South Fulton.
Okay, let's vote on that.
Wait a minute, can you repeat that? I'm
Line
sorry.
454, the city clerk shall maintain a list of not less than 9 submitted by city council or citizens.
Let's get a consensus on that recommendation.
So you're saying the pool will be citizens or city?
No, he says the pool will be submitted by council members or citizens.
This section only deals
This
with
section
who
only.
gets to make the submissions and how many people are in the pool.
Right.
Okay, that's your recommendation. Can I get a consensus? That fails for lack of full vote.
Can I make an amendment to that? Cause I'm not opposed to what
Just
is.
making a motion.
Can I just say that the pool should be submitted by mayor and city council versus residents? Cause when you start getting residents involved, it can get political.
Well, I think
Anything.
if anybody can submit, then the only people that would be allowed on the board are people who also meet the qualifications of the board. So all it's saying is that anybody can make a submission. It doesn't say that their submission automatically.
Oh, I
means
see what
they're
you're
in the
saying.
pool.
You're saying anybody can basically apply.
Anybody can apply and anybody can recommend
Right.
something.
Okay, so I would like to,
Make another motion.
I would like to, no, I would like to withdraw my
Your
consensus,
recommendation.
my recommendation and agree. Give them the fourth vote so they can have consensus to move forward with this. Okay.
Wait a minute.
So I make a motion, so I'll just do it again. I'll make a motion to change line
What's
450.
your
Yeah, I was on the
prevailing
prevailing
side?
side.
Yeah.
Okay. You got it, so go with that?
I don't know what's going on. Maybe somebody needs to motion.
Madam Attorney, she was on the prevailing side, and she wants to withdraw her motion.
I want to
To
withdraw
go to
my
the-
consensus. My consensus was no. I want to
She
withdraw
was on
that.
She was on the prevailing, and the vote has already been tallied.
Right.
I was on the prevailing
And
side.
Yes.
then she can do a motion to reconsider.
I
Absolutely.
want a motion to reconsider.
I said,
We're not voting, but I want consensus to reconsider, whatever y'all want to do.
There was a recommendation to reconsider,
Put it on there.
and we have a consensus to reconsider.
So they got enough to have
Excuse me,
consensus.
do we have enough to reconsider?
Yeah,
1, 2, 3.
it's not a vote, that's what I'm trying to, that's
not a legal vote.
Mayor, I promise you, that's what I'm trying to tell you.
No, it's
She's
not.
just simply providing her consensus to the group,
Right.
so now they automatically have
Right.
consensus.
Absolutely.
Mayor, that's what I was trying to tell you. I want to give.
But there was,
They just-
how many
they just
people
asked
voted?
for
Mr. Baker, did you
It was
vote?
three.
It was three.
I think that was.
Now, excuse me, what was the vote? Let's raise your hand again.
We're not voting.
What,
What was the consensus?
what was the consensus?
It was three, sir. Us three right here.
And I want to give my consensus.
All right,
It's four. So
that's 4, okay, that's all I want to know.
What happened to my motion?
Reconciliation.
Okay, you're on, Ms. Wild.
Again, I think our ethics board has worked. I think they did provide some additional clarification beyond just financial interests. And I think we should keep our current ethics board intact.
Okay, that's a recommendation. Can we get a consensus on that?
Keeping the current board?
Yes, that passes. Ms. Gilliard, go ahead.
I want to go back to 245 to 247. Did we address that?
Madam Clerk, can we address that?
yes, we deleted that section.
Okay.
All right,
I think that's it.
That's it.
I have some. Mine will be real quick, they might not even get consensus.
Mayor, Mayor, do I have
the floor.
I gave her the floor.
Yeah, I have some items.
You have some what?
Items for 1019. I thought we were working our way down the table.
Oh, we work by hand. Go ahead.
Okay, so the first is line 25. I would like to omit the words part-time from our titles.
Where is it?
Yeah, I agree.
In line 25, it says that it's 7 part-time mayor and council. I think it's clear at 453, this is not a part-time job, so I don't think you should be putting that in the job. Do I have any consensus?
I have consensus on that.
I have discussion though.
Charles, I'll get you, Mr. Baker. Madam Attorney, would that be, I won't say legal, to take the part-time out? I guess they're gonna put in full-time, right? Does it meet the requirements for a full-time job?
The work that you do,
I just asked the
I
question.
mean, you guys work double full time.
Really?
And to be clear, I'm not
Listen,
saying.
man.
Well, that's just saying
I've been
yes,
a
that
part-time
yeah, it is.
employee for 17 years,
Well,
and that's the job I accepted. So I'm just asking,
Part-time.
because if you wanna go to full-time, I know what full-time people pay is. Are we saying that?
No, what I'm saying, so currently, the charter does not list that we are part-time.
Okay,
It's salary.
It adds this adds part-time in. We can have the full-time argument at another day, and I am
Okay, I
so
can
ready
live
to
with
have that
that.
argument for every level of government. Because I think all of us work really hard. But for now, I'm just saying, I want to omit part-time. I want to take that out.
I agree, I give consensus on that.
okay, that was the recommendation, give me the consensus.
I can do it on that basis.
Yeah, let's,
Mayor, can I have a question?
Okay,
Question.
Ms. Willis?
The question is, are we removing part-time and just leaving it as is, no title at all? Because I agree with that. I don't think it should even be defined at this point.
Yes, that's my.
That's what he's
Okay.
talking.
That's what I thought,
All
yeah.
right, I'll go with that.
Okay.
All right, Mr. Khalid, 454.
Okay, the next item under, actually same line 25, in the original charter, right after that line, it mentions term limits, and they are not here. I want to make sure that we keep this term limited. I don't think people should be dying in these
Yeah,
seats.
they're not proposing to change that.
Yeah, that's.
Okay, so I just want, for the record, I would just like that, say that we have a consensus that we want these to remain term limited.
Okay.
This is not in
Is that it?
Don't make me laugh.
charter. All right, do we have a consensus for that?
That's
None to consent, it's already
line
there.
26, you said?
It's not in there.
Okay, right, it's not in the new one, but it was in the old one.
It's
And I'm not,
still there.
We're still there.
all right, because I just want to be clear that the last line of this says that it repeals anything, so I just don't want there to be any confusion about that. Anyway, I've said it on camera. The last one is,
Well, you know what, to be clear then, just maybe you need to say that we still support maintaining the term limit.
that's what I've said,
what you
Yeah.
said.
that's my position. Do I have consensus
I'm
for
with
it?
you on that.
Yes, you do.
Okay, my last change is line 31. I believe that people 18 should be able to run for office. They can run for office in Atlanta. I think that if you can vote, you should be able to run for office.
No problem.
Second.
Is there consensus
I
on that?
actually agree with that.
All right. You all right?
I can imagine.
You got consensus for that?
Yeah.
Heck no.
Y'all gonna do the vote on that one.
Y'all go ahead on to that.
No, that's what they want.
okay, can we get out of motion?
Did we get a consensus?
Yes,
Okay, awesome.
yes.
Wait,
No, you gotta
our
vote.
clerk is saying,
No, I didn't see
No,
that.
y'all vote.
Consensus
18.
on changing it to 18?
All right, let's get a consensus by hand on changing the 18.
Yeah, it passed.
The 18.
It's
It passed.
agreeable.
Okay, Ms. Willis?
I would like to move, make a move to, that we adjourn and send the rest of our, it is almost 5 o'clock, 3 minutes from 5. And with everything that we want to change, it always ensues a discussion, which is not a problem. Healthy discussion is good. But I think that we should adjourn. Nicole, can I please? I move that we adjourn, and I'm asking that we send the rest of our changes for the rest of these House bills to our clerk, copy our mayor. May I please have the, mayor, I have the floor.
Continue, please, go ahead.
Send the rest of our changes for all of the bills, the rest of 1019 and the rest of the House bills. Send our recommended changes to the clerk and copy the mayor. And then I would like to ask for our mayor to reach back out to our senators, because at this point, most of these bills are going on the Senate side. And respectfully ask them if they will consider our recommendations, and also respectfully ask if they will consider meeting with us.
All right.
At the Capitol.
You've already put that in the motion, so you want to make sure what you don't do right here is consistent. Let me read to you what you have right now. With what you approved earlier, you have the city directs A.R. Long, the city's authorized and registered lobbyist, to facilitate a meeting among the South Fulton senators, city council, and the local delegation. A.R. Long is authorized to rely on the city's opposition to the 2020 disputed, and I took out the word disputed, House bills. Every reference to calling the House bill disputed, I removed that. And it says it is further is further directed to hand deliver a copy of this resolution. So right now, his instruction is to bring a copy of it to all the senators and everyone on SLOGO and to facilitate a meeting. So what I'm saying,
I would like to add, I still have the floor, and she just asked if she
Go
make a
ahead,
recommendation.
Rose.
I would like to ask that we ask for A.R. Long and our mayor because just out of proper protocol, most people do want to speak to the Clio of cities. So I would ask out of proper protocol that this request comes from the mayor and our lobbyist. He's a lobbyist. But the Clio of our city is Mayor William Bill Edwards. And most people want to deal with the Clio. So I would suggest, I have the floor, right, Mayor? I would suggest that includes the mayor and the lobbyist.
Okay.
And then we submit everything to the clerk, because the lobbyist already corresponds with the clerk with this report. The clerk take our changes and send them to the lobbyist so that he can put forth a detailed report of what he submitted.
Okay, Mr. Baker, go ahead and we'll take the vote.
I think we took action on the resolution,
So
right?
you would have to reconsider and then change the direction as presented by council.
And I'm definitely not okay with it. So I don't know how we move forward, because we've already taken the action on this resolution.
And you're
and I wanna
perfectly
do it.
correct, but she wants to make a motion, she can, but I agree.
So
with you.
she can, anyone who voted for that can do a motion to reconsider, and then if you approve that, then she would provide the language, and she'd ask you to revise that.
All right, well, it's not gonna happen. Let's take a, is there a second to adjourn? Properly moved to second.
Let's adjourn, I'm good.
Second.
All
No, I
right.
mean, not second. Discussion.
What's your discussion?
So, being that, again, it was mentioned that we don't have a whole lot of time, and we wanted to be thoughtful in our, I guess, recommendations, is it appropriate to ask for them to, again, even through the resolution, I know we ask for them to, not necessarily table, but facilitate some type of communication on all of the bills? That is what we said,
So
correct?
that's, you requested them to sit down collectively to discuss everything, and for the lobbyists to
And
facilitate
Mr.
that.
Long was gonna facilitate that.
Even though we started with 1019, and I think we've kind of completed it, even though we didn't get a chance to get to the other ones, is it appropriate to ask them to table, or?
You
So
said
his
that.
current responsibility would include every House bill,
Okay.
Can I make a suggestion?
unless you.
No, it's a motion on the floor.
My motion was that we have not completed 1019.
No,
There are
the
some,
motion on the floor has nothing to do with that.
well, I'm saying that I asked that we send all of our changes, recommended changes,
said
to
that.
the clerk,
You said that.
and then have the clerk send them to Mr. Long.
There's a motion on the floor.
The attorney just opined and clarified what the resolution said. So at this point, I'm just asking all of us to adjourn and send our recommended changes to the clerk.
Motion to adjourn.
No, that's two motions.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. That's-
Maybe one motion on the floor I'm trying to get done, and that's the motion to adjourn.
Oh, I know, but
I don't hear
Well,
no
my-
other motion.
My motion
So
was to
it's
adjourn
the
and
same.
send changes to the
You
clerk.
can't,
Okay, well, motion to adjourn then.
all right, listen, hands. Adjourn.
All right, bye.
Okay.
Thank you all for coming out and bearing with us.
Do y'all realize, I just want y'all to realize, you left it up for them to say